Unified School District Governing Board meeting. Can we have roll call, please?
Kimberly,
Here.
Carmen. Here. Lisa is absent today. Mary Beth,
Here.
Sophia.
Here.
We have quorum.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So for approval of the agenda this evening, I'd like to recommend that we approve the agenda with 2 minor revisions, and those are pulling item 4Q and 5J. Do I have a motion?
Can you recap what those items are?
Item 4Q is purchase of lawnmowers for the fields, and item 5J is a resolution which starts a process to follow only DSA requirements and not local ordinances. And so we'll pull those for further study.
And so are you requesting to pull them entirely or to put them in discussion for today? Like
Pull them
from
entirely,
the
no
agenda?
discussion tonight.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
And I just have a question for our superintendent, Amber Lialba. Do you have any questions or concerns about that change to the schedule? To the agenda?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we have the motion and the second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Passes 4-0.
Thank you. Next up are public comments. Do we have any public comments in the room? If not, just a quick point of order. I know we have one general comment, but for the items, actually, all of these, do we read the public comments for the items that we pulled from the agenda?
Probably not. We're not doing the agenda.
Okay, then we'll not read those to be expedient, so thank you.
We can read them. We'll hold them over to the next meeting if we're going to carry that item
Okay,
over.
we can publish those, though.
Yes.
Yeah, we can publish them in the minutes, so we have a record of it because people took the time to write in. I think that honors it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up are employee organization reports. I don't see anyone from CUTA or CSEA, which brings us to board member reports. I can start and say that I really enjoyed going to both the El Granada and Fairlawn View graduations. It's been a flurry of a year, but those were really special occasions. And I want to welcome Superintendent Lialba. It's a pleasure to have you on board. I know we're in a bit of a transition time now, but for having been here less than 2 weeks, our new superintendent has surely hit the ground running. So thank you and welcome. Carmen?
I'd like to second that welcome to Superintendent Lialba. We're really happy to have you here. Also I attended my kids' middle school and Fairlawn View graduations last week, and was it this week? No, anyway, last week. And they were delightful, so shout out to all of the hard work that went into organizing those and making them come off beautifully. So it's my moment for tonight. Thank you.
All right. Mary Beth's pointing to me, so I'll go next, and I'll speak into the microphone. Keep me on track. Also, welcome Superintendent Lialba. We're thrilled to have you here. It was really fun. She met me and we went to Coast Pride together for a bit and did a little downtown Half Moon Bay tour, which is really cool to kind of show her a little bit of the library, bookstores and all that kind of cool stuff. So that was really fun. I was going through my calendar, and it's been a busy month, so yeah, lots beside, like with the graduations and promotions and everything. But I can say it was really a pleasure and encouraging to meet again with district and labor partners at 2 sessions since our last meeting with, I believe, with the California Labor Management Initiative facilitator, as we continue to hone our skills and explore communication structures to improve collaboration towards our common goals of student outcomes. It was also heartwarming to participate in a community restorative circle facilitated by Pilarcitos High School staff as part of a broader rollout of these practices to school communities. It was really inspiring. I met with CUSD Safe Routes to School staff in support of their advocacy efforts for safety improvements to the Highway 1 Kelly Avenue intersection, as that's a major crossing for many of our students, right, including Cunha students attending this school, as well as staff that are getting to and from school, many of our school sites downtown. It was exciting to participate also in the Spring Agricultural Sciences CTE Advisory Committee, which is led by Half Moon Bay High School teachers and the Ag Sci Department. We were joined by local farmers, ranchers, and nonprofits as we continue to work together to explore further opportunities for hands-on learning, including applying for a potential grant for a new floral design and entrepreneurship course, which I think will be really cool. Outside of our schools, I attended the funeral for our son, the son of our esteemed mayor of Half Moon Bay, Joaquin Jimenez, and I would like to publicly offer Mayor Jimenez and his family my sincerest condolences for their loss. On a more celebratory note, it was exciting to honor our students as Carmen and Kim already referenced their experiences. I was able to attend and hand out leis with Amber at the Hatch 5th grade promotion ceremony, and also to participate at the commencements for Half Moon Bay High School, Pilarcitos, and La Costa graduates too. And it was fun, as I referenced earlier, to dance with friends from Republic Services and the Coastside Chamber of Commerce on the float, their float for the Half Moon Bay Pride Parade last weekend. Their theme was Everyone Belongs, which is near and dear to my heart, and I might as well emblazon on a t-shirt, that just says it all to me. And I was able to catch up with our state assembly member, Mark Berman, there, as well as, I will say, one of my all-time personal favorite farmers, if not all-time favorite farmer, John Mueller, AKA Farmer John. So that was my local stuff. At the state and county level, it was a joy to present awards to our Half Moon Bay High School Ag Sci and Real Life Learning teams at the San Mateo County School Boards Association's Kent Awards last month. It feels like long ago, but it was, I think, just after our last board meeting. And it was an honor to be elected president of San Mateo County School Boards Associations by our board member peers across San Mateo County. I participated in San Mateo County Office of Ed's annual May revised budget update, which was pretty depressing, but is the reality of what our state is facing right now. And related to that, I drove out again to Sacramento for our twice yearly California School Boards Association Delegate Assembly meeting for a couple of days out there. Working with folks across the state to advance policies for 4 major areas: strengthening local governance, securing fair funding, improving conditions of children, and ensuring achievement for all. I also participated in CSBA's monthly legislative committee to input on advocacy positions for bills currently being considered in the legislature. And I'm really excited to announce that SB 1315, the bill for which I testified last month in the Assembly Education Committee, has been moving forward quickly, and I believe it was approved actually on the consent agenda. We got that alert earlier today of the Senate Education Committee, and now it's going to Senate Appropriations. So I'm glad I didn't have to go up there again to testify, because I was going to have to do that. So I was glad it was on consent. In this bill, actually, I have a visual for this one, because this was a report that CSBA pulled together to show our legislators like how many reports and plans school districts are preparing, like all the time, every year. It's a lot, and a lot of these are duplicative and not really comprehensible. We'll get to that when we see the LCAP too. It's a good example. So hopefully by having this transparency into the amount of bureaucratic work that school districts are doing, we can have some support from CDE to reduce that. And therefore be able to spend our very precious dollars on our students instead of on reports no one reads. So, we can see even in this month as an example, our board packet is like 1,052 pages. As Rosie knows, I think it might be one of our biggest ever, if not the biggest ever. And that's just crazy. If you printed that out, it'd be 2 stacks of paper. Also, statewide, state-related, I met by Zoom with staff from the Office of State Speaker Pro Tem Mike McGuire to oppose the governor's proposed Prop 98 maneuver for the state budget, as this would have led to tens of billions in funding reductions over the coming years, including us, as well as functional elimination of the Prop 98 funding guarantee for our state schools, which would be bad. If you'd like to learn more about this, latest risk to cuts in public funding, Google KQED budget deficit schools. There's a really good interview with one of the leaders, former assemblyman from California, and you can listen to the interview explaining what we've been working on. So lastly, I just want to say is there was a letter to the editor earlier this week by Jim Larimer, one of our community members. I think he really eloquently said public school administrators have not decided to pay teachers less. The funds to pay them what we deserve are missing. It is our willingness to fund public schools that is lacking, and that also captures the ethos of why I'm on Highway 80 a lot, going to Sacramento. So other than that, I just want to say I'm grateful for the support of School Services of California and for all the hard work by district staff in finding a way to offer CUTA. The fact findings panel's recommended 6% cumulative salary schedule with 1,500 bonus and health benefit increase. As we'll see, I know we'll have the budget presentation later tonight. This really was possible because district staff took big risks in changing some assumptions for revenues upwards, which makes them more likely to fall through, and in committing to further as yet to be specified cuts, which we'll also talk about later. But I just want to highlight now, as a preview, we have some large amounts of cuts to make this work. Also, as a process reminder for anyone who might be unfamiliar, because it is complicated and also bureaucratic with mediation, any offers that are made during earlier stages of the mediation process prior to fact finders' reports are confidential. So I know there's a lot of talk about 1% offers. That doesn't necessarily count anything that happens during mediation, and I won't say any details, but I just want to clarify that process because I know there's been confusion in the community about that. I'm hopeful we can close out this round of negotiations as soon as possible to let staff get their back pay that they would get if it closes out, allowing HR to recruit remaining open positions for this coming school year with that nice higher schedule. That'd be really cool. And also benefits, and support our shared value of keeping teachers on the coast side, which I think also something we all share. Work to continue fine-tuning the district's budgeting process, I know is underway as well, and that's definitely essential for long-term sustainability. So hopefully we can talk more about getting some updates on that front, because I know that's been a topic of interest too. But I'm hoping that if we can close that negotiation soon, then staff can shift their efforts to focusing on that work as well, and really kind of get us more sustainable in the longer term, and also allow the healing process to begin more in earnest, as I know all have been trying to do already. Also, we can start to prepare for further increases in future years, because that's kind of like rapidly upon us too. And really remembering why we're here all together with our shared goal of student outcomes as well. So hopefully we can get back to that and work together. I do always believe more, not in a zero-sum game, but in win-wins for everyone. There's plenty to share and celebrate. So I'm looking forward to, we have a very packed agenda today, and I know we're gonna have one more meeting and then take at least a couple weeks off in July. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the meeting today. Thank you.
Well, I agree with all that. I'll be short. A lot of what she said. And then, did you talk about the Learning Management Institute? A little bit. So that is ongoing, and I think it's a great opportunity for us all to be working together. So that's in there. And you did mention the Ken Awards, but I just wanted to talk about how special it is to see some of our employees that have worked so hard putting in place new great programs and stuff to kind of get some kudos back, and it was just really great to see that, because I know they've worked really hard for that, so that was great. I also wanted to mention that for our Green Ribbon Award, it is there's a ceremony in Washington DC for that, and some people from the district are going. So that's a pretty big deal. I think 10 districts throughout the country won that, so it's a big deal. So anyway, that's coming up this summer. So that's pretty exciting, and lots of committee meetings at the end of the year happened. All the graduations, we were all split up and made sure we got some of us there for that. I also wanted to mention, you made me think of it when you were talking, on the CSBA website, there's some information, there's a video that we saw about the housing stuff, and it actually has some good information on there about workforce housing, and they talk a little bit about Jefferson High School District in Daly City, how their workforce housing has helped them to, they had a big problem with attracting and retaining employees, and since they have the housing now, it's pretty much stopped that problem, and there's a little bit in the video. I thought it was an interesting video, so I mentioned it. If people are interested in workforce housing, you might want to check out that video. And lastly, I wanted to thank, I want to welcome our new superintendent. And I also want to thank Sophia for going to Sacramento and spending so much of her time advocating for our schools at the state level. And it's a big, it's a big commitment, and she spends a lot of time doing that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that because, she works hard for us, and she's taking on the president role of our county organization now as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Superintendent?
Well, welcome, trustees. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for entrusting me in the care of our students and our families of the Cabrillo Unified School District. Already, I have fallen in love with the coast side. It's only been 9 days, but I'm just having a blast. It's been wonderful. So over the past few days, I have visited every single school site, and because you guys gave me the gift of starting in June rather than in July, I was able to see schools in action when students were still in session. And I just want to commend all of our teachers and support staff. Oftentimes, you see in schools, the last week of school, not a whole lot of instruction is happening, but that's not the case here in Cabrillo Unified. Students were engaged in high-level thinking and questioning and projects and collaboration. It was very refreshing, and it was exciting to see. I met individually with each principal and individually with each department lead. I attended the promotion ceremonies for Cunha, Hatch, Kings Mountain, and the promotion lunch for Fairlawn View. Due to scheduling conflicts, I was unable to attend El Granada. And I attended the graduation ceremonies for Pilarcitos High School, La Costa Adult School, and Half Moon Bay High School. And I also attended a very productive negotiation session with CUTA. And before the negotiation sessions, I met with our lead negotiator and then also informally met with 4 of the CUTA members just to listen and begin to understand some of their concerns and some of their issues. And then this past week, I attended a leadership end-of-the-year training and retreat that was organized and led by our very own Deputy Superintendent, Leticia. It was very fabulous to get together as our group of leaders and just kind of retreat, think about this past year, and then really prepare ourselves for the coming year. And with that, I want to thank you again for this opportunity, and I look forward to the planning over the summer as we prepare to welcome our students back for the 24-25 school year.
Thank you. That brings us to item 4, the consent agenda. I remind us that we pulled item 4Q, so do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is this in mass or roll call? Okay.
One adjustment to the consent agenda, if I can, I guess maybe if I could offer an alternative motion to approve. There is one error in the CCAP item. Sorry, I didn't mention it earlier. In the CCAP document, Sean McFetridge's name is still listed there, and I think that needs to be changed to Amberly Alva. As far as, okay.
Thank you
So
for
I guess
catching
I
that.
would like to make a motion to approve with an amendment to the CCAP agreement listing Amber instead of Sean.
There's also the legal services agreement that also has Sean's
Oh,
name
okay.
that we
So
need.
then I'll make a motion to approve with those 2 changes.
Yes, please.
From Sean to Amber on both of those items, the CCAP agreement and which item was it, Rosie?
So we have 4H was the CCAP.
Okay.
Okay.
For
So we
S
have-
and for T.
Okay, so S and T and H then had, yeah. So thank you for catching that.
Okay, yeah. So
I'll s-
H, S, and T.
I'll second.
So we need roll call. Kimberly,
Aye.
Carmen. Lisette is absent today. Mary Beth,
Aye.
Sophia,
Aye.
passes 4-0.
And that brings us to item 5A, student recognition for Half Moon Bay High School salutatorian, Jaya Miller and valedictorian Angel Tanevi. They're not here. I didn't know if we had, let me see what we. Big thank you. We've got two wonderful, we will find a way to get the salutatorian and valedictorian certificates to them. And next year, we're going to invite them in May before school is out. Not the same people, but next year's honorees. So work well done. Huh?
They don't know their grades yet.
They won't know the grades yet. Well, that's just wonky. We'll figure out something. Maybe, we'll figure out something. Okay.
It is under student recognition, but we do have our new student board member in the audience.
Yes. I'm sorry, I have not met you yet.
Maybe she could stand and
Well, if you
introduce
would like
herself.
to come to the mic and introduce yourself. No. Looks like a little talker.
The little face with the lines.
I see no light.
It can be weird.
And sometimes they don't work, so, but yeah.
Hi, my name is Jamie Bickle. I'm a incoming senior at Half Moon Bay High School.
Welcome, Jamie, and we look forward to you being here to lead the pledge and share your announcements every month.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Nice. Thank you.
You got to work on that button pushing though.
There'll be a test at the next meeting. No. Our next item is item 5B, local control and accountability plan presentation, local indicators presentation, and public hearing.
Good evening, President Hines, Governing Board Member, Superintendent Lee Alva, colleagues, and community. So I'm here today to actually provide two presentations. One of our new local control accountability plan, 3-year plan. It's new this year. It is a draft plan right now, and it will be going to every year. It goes to 2 to 3 different iterations of the LCAP. And also I'm here today to present the local control accountability plan, local indicators report that is required by the California Department of Education for us to present our local indicators and metrics. So Rosie, can we start with the board presentation, the LCAP 2425, item 5B3? So while Rosie helps us project that, this is a new local control accountability plan, and the LCAP is approved for a period of 3 academic school years. This is starting 2024-25, and we are fortunate enough to have the new 3-year LCAP align with the previously approved strategic plan. And so all of the goals within the strategic plan you will see included in the LCAP, as well as some of our differentiated assistance goals that are required to be present in the LCAP. Okay. And so for today, I am going to just provide an overview of the LCAP goals, highlight the actions and services, and there are many attachments in the board packet, and there you're going to see the fine detail around the metrics of the previous annual update. And for today, I really do want to highlight the actions and services of the upcoming LCAP. Just because we did use some metrics, some of our assessment measures, local assessment measures that we were still using due to post-COVID pandemic, some of the online assessments were sunsetted. And so it's very hard to compare apples to oranges, but we're very fortunate to now have the California dashboard data present and able to use those as metrics, as our KPIs, our key performance indicators, that I will talk about in the fall as well. Okay, here we go. So on this slide, you're going to see an overview of the strategic plan. We have 4 strategic plan priorities. The first one is around academic improvement. Under academic improvement, it is important for us to ultimately make sure that our students, when they do graduate, from our Half Moon Bay High School or Pilarcitos High School, their students are college and career ready. Early literacy continues to be a focus. It's important for us to make sure that we close that achievement gap earlier rather than waiting to middle school or high school when the literacy gap might be more difficult for children to catch up. And also important for us to look at culturally responsive classrooms to promote a meaningful and respectful instruction within the class. The second priority you're going to see in our goals are around an equity focus, improved achievement for our at-promise students, fair practices for all students, and a safe school environment. The third priority is around the whole child. The first one, layers of support, and this means our multi-tiered systems of support, making sure that we are able to support the social emotional aspect of our students. Social emotional support, mental health, emotional support would be the second action under whole child. And lastly, family engagement and support to ensure that we are reaching all of our families within our community. Lastly, district sustainability, and under sustainability, we're talking about environmental sustainability. I know Trustee Alexander mentioned that we are going to Washington, D.C. to accept our Green Achiever Award in a few weeks. So we want to continue to ensure that we are continuing to implement the actions that we spoke about in our Green Ribbon application, as well as our environmental sustainability plan. Fiscal sustainability, I know that Superintendent Lee Alva mentioned making sure that we are looking at fiscal resources to see if we can provide additional increased salary benefits for our staff. And employee sustainability, and I know my dear colleague, Bianca Forrester, continues to always recruit. I think every day she's thinking about how to improve recruitment efforts, retention of our highly qualified staff. And another goal is ensuring that we also recruit a diverse staff that matches our community, because the research has shown that if a child sees themselves in an educator, they feel more confident and more welcome, more open. And so we want to make sure that we diversify the staff and also include the culturally responsive training around professional development, so that should we have staff that may not match a child's background, they understand that cultures might behave differently in class. And this is some of the efforts and some of our goals that we're looking at that you're going to see in our LCAP goals. Now, here's the first overview. I think I might have skipped a slide. Okay. So here, California School Dashboard. Our California Dashboard is divided into 3 buckets of LCAP priorities. The first at the top are the conditions for learning. Basic services is making sure that we have the facilities in good repair, teachers are fully credentialed, making sure that we have standard-aligned materials for our students. The second is making sure that we are teaching the Common Core state standards, ensuring that the academic contents and performance standards are being referred to as we're lesson planning. Lastly, course access under conditions of learning. We want to make sure that we are providing our students with electives, with various CTE and alternative pathways, and these 3 fall under the conditions of learning. Now, in the middle, you're going to see pupil outcomes. And under pupil outcomes, we have pupil achievement, and this is measured. The pupil outcomes are basically measured by the California Dashboard and CAS data, as well as other metrics. So these would be our standardized scores under CAS, the AP pass rate, graduation rate, LPAC and reclassification rates, and college and career readiness. Lastly, the engagement priorities are based around pupil engagement, attendance rate, middle and high school dropout rates, graduation rates, and chronic absenteeism. And as Superintendent Lealva mentioned, this previous end-of-year training with our administrators and our staff really did have a focus around how to improve attendance and decrease chronic absenteeism. Now, chronic absenteeism is not unique to Cabrillo. We have seen a trend all across California and the United States post-COVID with high absenteeism rates. But this is something that our entire team it's all hands on deck, and we want to make sure that our kids are engaged and feel welcome to improve pupil engagement in the classroom. School climate focuses on the metrics on suspension rates, expulsion, and climate surveys. This would be the California Healthy Kids Survey. And lastly, parental involvement, seeking parental input in all decision-making and promoting participation of our parents. This next slide, you're going to see our continuous improvement cycle. And this work is, you've probably have heard of cycle of inquiry, of the cycle of inquiry that was used before, the PLCs. Right now we're using the Carnegie Foundation's continuous improvement cycle. We are partnering with our fabulous San Mateo County Office of Ed Partners that will continue to support us through differentiated assistance. And what this continuous improvement cycle means is that we as a team will select various metrics, and we'll look at those metrics and ask ourselves, well, what is the gap? Why do we feel that these data metrics have a gap, either academic achievement gap, or if we're looking at chronic absentee, why are our kids not coming to school? So then we study why, we look at research-based best practices, we develop a plan, we implement the plan, and then we continuously look at the data. Is this working? Do we need to readjust? And this is some of the work that looks at root causes and looks at research-based best practices to close achievement gaps. Now, in the LCAP, you are going to see various metrics, over 30 metrics that we are using. However, please know that we have all hands on deck, from our principals to our site administrative assistants, from our maintenance and operation teams, from our food services technology department. Everybody is taking a piece of the local control accountability plan measures to and using this cycle of continuous improvement to continue to serve our kids and close those academic and social gaps that some of the data is demonstrating, that I've presented to the community and to you two as governing board members. Okay, so now we're going into the new goals. In the new LCAP, we have continued with the 3 types of goals. The focus goal, which is a concentrated focus goal that uses certain metrics to improve. It is time-bound, and it could be a 1, 2, or 3 year goal. And in our LCAP, I'll go into further detail of what the focus goals are. And this would be a specific goal for a specific subgroup of student or an area of growth. The broad goal is a broad goal, so it's more a district-wide goal. It's not pertinent to, let's say, an English learner or special education, students with disabilities. The broad goal, it's more concentrated as a goal to support a district-wide effort to improve a wide range of metrics. We do have broad goals, and these we really do. We have it's a 3-year metric. So we hope that during the course of this next 3-year LCAP that we meet the broad goal metrics and close the achievement gap. The third type of goal that we have here is a maintenance of progress goal. And what a maintenance of progress goal basically means that we are doing well in certain areas, and we don't want to forget about like these great initiatives that are taking place. One example is our career technical education department. We continue to grow, but we want to make sure that we stay on track and maintain that goal, maintain that progress. We don't want to go in reverse. So these are the 3 types of goals that you're going to see here in the LCAP. And now here are some of our broad goals. So the first one is, and you're going to see the pattern, is our academic improvement strategic plan goal. And under LCAP Goal 1, under academic improvement, under this goal, we're looking at maintaining highly qualified staff, defining district-wide implementation of the academic content and performance standards, and providing opportunities for all students to access courses. On this slide, you're also going to see that correlation between the LCAP priorities I had mentioned earlier. The first action under Goal 1 is around college and career. And under this, and I'm not going to go into detail because you can read what these specific actions and services are under the services are under the college and career action. But some of them some of them would be to allocate our reading intervention and ELD support for students. In the LCAP, particularly our supplemental, which is about $2.5 million that we have to set aside to serve our unduplicated students. These would be our English learners, our socioeconomically disadvantaged students and foster youth. We do allocate about $650,000 on teachers on special assignment, kinder through eighth grade, to support reading and ELD support. And already there, I mean, we're talking about 20% this. And again, you can take a look at the actions and services and see how that's correlated to the LCAP supplemental funding. The next action follows around, next goal is around early literacy efforts. It's, again, as I mentioned earlier, the data shows, and we're a Big Lift district, part of San Mateo County that is continuing to receive funds for the Big Lift, which is an early literacy program that supports early literacy pre-K through 3rd grade. And the data shows that if we close that achievement gap earlier and get students to read by 3rd grade, our students will be more successful and less interventions will be needed in middle school and high school. One example of a service under the early literacy efforts, it's around standardizing early learning assessments for early learning plans. Right now we are using DIBELS 8, and we have a literacy committee that has been formed by our amazing teachers on special assignment and reading intervention specialists. And this group is actually taking time. We have over 10 teachers that are taking summer time to get trained on the science of reading this summer. And we are going to hit the ground running next year in making sure that not only are we giving professional development from our own teachers to a classroom teacher, but we're also assessing 3 times a year and engaging in data chats with the site principal, with our teachers, to make sure that no child is left behind. That's all. Well, that we catch our students, early to make sure that they're reading by 3rd grade, which is the big lift goal. I had mentioned this earlier. It's important for us to ensure that our students are welcome and their culture is valued in the classroom. And some of the work around our culturally responsive classroom goal is to take a look at, and I'm just going to choose 1.3b, is to provide staff with culturally responsive curricula and materials to support inclusive, supportive learning environments. In the LCAP, we have set aside funding to support our classroom libraries so that we can provide a diverse set of books that our students could have access to, our librarians could have access to. It's also important for us to ensure that we engage in classroom visits to ensure that we are providing as much support around culturally responsive teaching methods. And continuing to monitor, Hatch Elementary School, I feel our community is already inclusive and values multilingualism and multiculturalism. And that can be seen through our Hatch program and the availability of teaching Spanish in middle school as an elective, and also in high school, of course. And so some of these funds are set aside to continue to support our bilingual programs. And then the other type of goals that you'll see in the LCAP that are not directly linked to our strategic plan are around differentiated assistance. And differentiated assistance is this amazing support that we've received over the last 2 years from San Mateo County Office of Ed, which is the designated DA support group for districts. And we are looking at DA support around math academic performance. And this is what I had mentioned, the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, that circle that I showed you. This is some of the work that our county partners have supported us. They paid for 2 of our staff members to attend the Carnegie Foundation training so that we also could get cross-trained in making sure that we learn about the cycle of continuous improvement. So another goal would be around the college and career readiness indicator. And in this goal, we want to ensure that we're looking at, again, equity concerns, cultural competence for all educators, and ensuring that students are prepared for college and career. And again, the San Mateo County Office of Ed will continue to support these efforts through various trainings. They were present in supporting us this past was on Wednesday when we trained our principals and our district office staff and administrative assistants in looking at how we can continue to increase opportunities to have our students feel included and part of a community in the classroom. Okay, the LCAP Goal 2, focus on equity. Now, in LCAP Goal 2, the actions under the focus on equity broad goal focuses on increasing academic achievement for at-promise students, English learners, special education, Hispanic, Latinx students, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students, which are the major subgroups that we see in the California dashboard and through CASP that continue to have a red mark of not showing enough growth on the different metrics provided by the state. On focus on equity, we want to look at improved achievement for our at-promise students. And by at-promise, we mean unduplicated students plus the additional subgroups that we mentioned. By at-promise, our definition of at-promise here at Cabrillo is the unduplicated, which is the official word in the local control, in the LCFF formula for English learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and foster youth. But for us, the student subgroups are broader than the unduplicated students. We're including our students with disability. We're including our students who are homeless group of students. We're including Hispanic Latino students. We're also including LGBTQ plus students. So it's a broader group of students to ensure that we support the academic and social development. So some of it, under Focus on Equity, you are going to see some services around English language development supports. This includes summer school. Today was the first launch of summer school, and if you walk through the hallways, you see our At Promise students in action. Now, funding is set aside to support some of the summer, even though we do receive more than 50%, about 70% in grants. It's paid out of mainly categorical. We do reserve also some LCAP supplemental, which is considered categorical as well, to support summer school. We also are looking into culturally relevant enrichment programs to support the core curriculum, interventions, and we include here our community liaisons. So we have community liaisons at Hatch, at El Granada, at Cunha, at Half Moon Bay High School. And again, we're talking about another $350,000 that's set aside on staff to support our efforts around Focus on Equity. So the next action is around fair practices for all students. This upcoming year, and you're going to see in the LCAP, we were reviewing the metrics today, and we did not hold our Latinx committee meeting, our LGBTQ committee meeting this year. But why? Because we had an equity committee as well as a strategic plan committee, so we included some of the members there. And part of that committee mentioned, instead of having these separate committees, let's form a diversity, equity, and inclusion group, and that will start this upcoming academic year. Okay, now I'm going to maybe go a little bit faster, if that's okay, because I think okay, so we have Focus on Equity, differentiate assistance for English learner progress. And now we have our maintenance of progress goal. And this one I will go fast because this maintenance of progress goal really looks at things that we're doing well. We want to maintain the progress of these metrics. So here the whole child is our next priority. And under the priority, we have the action of social emotional supports, promoting social emotional learning, mental health and emotional supports for students. Then we have family engagement and support for the next action. And as I had mentioned earlier, we are looking at support from the San Mateo County under technical assistance for differentiated assistance for chronic, this is for suspension rates and also chronic absenteeism. There we go. And now our focus goals. Our district, we talked about district sustainability. So here you're going to see the environmental sustainability actions and services, our fiscal sustainability actions and services. And I just want to say something here, that fiscal sustainability actions and service, thank you, Dr. Contreras, for including all of the FICMAT recommendations under this goal. And lastly, employee sustainability. My other colleague, Ms. Bianca Forrester. And here you have kind of a snapshot of all the strategic plan goals, actions, and services. Now, if you want to read the actions and services in detail, I invite you to pull that 100-page PDF of the LCAP to read in further detail. And Dr. Contreras, I think I'm going to try to do this myself, but if I miss something, please interrupt me. Yes. And so here we have LCFF versus basic aid. We're a flipper district, right? That we've said, and we're now going into the basic aid we were LCFF and now we're going into basic aid, and the visual speaks for itself. Under LCFF, we have property taxes, and if the state defines the bucket as being the amount of funding that a school district needs to have, a minimum. It's the baseline. Now, there are some districts that, because of property taxes, they don't fill that bucket. So then the state comes in and gives some either concentration or supplemental funding to fill that. Now, as a basic aid district who might have a lot more property taxes, the property taxes might overflow and the state allows the district to keep those funds. Now, for us, I call ourselves the middle income district because we don't have that much overflow. It's just a few drops. So it doesn't really benefit us like a Hillsborough or I don't know what else, like a Menlo Park, or anybody else, yes. So our blue is just a few drops. It doesn't really look like that, and that is why we keep flipping back and forth, because like middle income families, we don't really benefit from the concentration funding that our neighbor La Honda Pescadero receives, millions of dollars in concentration funding. But yet we don't benefit from this overflow of blue because we just have a few drops of overflow. So I hope that explanation was okay, Dr. Contreras. And here—
Dr. Bhatia?
Yes.
If I could add that, to put it in perspective, it's not just about a few drops. It's about this district being $7,000 per pupil below the county average, and there are 11 districts that are about where we are that are 7,000 or more below the county average, and that's a longer-term objective that I have, is to collaborate with those other districts so we can have a stronger voice.
Thank you, President Hines. In this, on this slide, you're going to see that we've received approximately 2.4 I thought it was 2.5. Last year it was 2.5. So we're receiving a little bit less, like maybe 75,000 less than the previous years for 24-25. But it's stayed pretty consistent, as you can see, between 2015 to now. The pattern that you can see is around the enrollment that has steadily decreased between about 100 to 150 students per year. Oh, and I completed the presentation. Any questions?
Is it one agenda item or two?
It's one
it's all
agenda.
one.
Do the other one.
Oh,
Yeah.
do the other one. Okay, that one will be quick.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. So, well, that's that one, yes. This is the local indicator presentation. And as I had, the LCAP has the 11 priorities, right? Now, the local indicator presentation, the state says, well, we'll define the metrics. And so the California dashboard and the gauge that let me just have the presentation guide. I probably have this presentation. I think that's it, right? Okay, so the indicators, we have state performance indicators, we have local performance indicators. The state performance indicators are measured by the gauge. The red means lowest performing. It means that students are not increasing because we might have a low score, but if we see that the students are showing improvement, the state does give us some extra points. But when we have low performance and declining performance, that's when we're going to see a lot of the red indicators. And so this is through the California dashboard. Then we have local performance indicators, which is tonight's presentation around local measures that we use to publicly share with our community and the governing board to demonstrate that we are using data to monitor and increase in the indicated measure of performance. This next slide, you're going to see the 6 state indicators on the orange. which would be on the right-hand side of the slide. The 6 state indicators, again, you see the colors. This is how the indicators are measured by the state. This is done through the CalPADS report, which would be the state student information system that pulls data twice a year, actually. And on the right hand, you're going to see our 5 local indicators, which are basic conditions, implementation of academic standards, parent engagement, school climate, and access to a broad course of study. Now, for the basic conditions, I do want to say that as I go through this, the state only requires us to present our objective and analysis of a growth, but even though we don't meet the growth, we don't get penalized because of it. We just need to present and say we're doing our best and we're trying to meet the growth. So that's where you're going to see objective met, because the objective met is presenting how we're measuring that particular LCAP indicator, LCFF indicator. So under basic conditions, and this is new in the California Department Education Data Quest, our objective is to ensure that at minimum of 83% of CUSD teacher workforce have a California Clear teaching credential. And the analysis currently is that 81.6% of teachers are considered, quote, highly qualified. And I do have a glossary to define these terms, because I know that some of the words that are used in the data quest, some of my colleagues had a few questions about this, so I did include the glossary. The other goal and analysis is that 8.9% of teachers are currently working on clearing credentials via induction, which is the beginning teacher credential program, or Tier 2 program. And the actions that we are using is to, again, retain, recruit, and train, and continue to train to keep highly qualified teachers to stay within Cabrillo Unified, but also to recruit them into our district. And the next slide, you're going to see, this is from a snapshot of the California Data Quest, where you're going to see the total teaching FTE, what percentage is a clear percentage, who is out of field, who's an intern. I do want to ineffective, incomplete, unknown, and NA. And as you can see at the bottom, for statewide, the percentage of clear is 84%. In San Mateo, it's 82.9%, which is comparable to Cabrillo Unified School District. And you're going to see I guess a difference of 1 to 2% across all of the basic conditions of having having highly qualified teachers in the classroom. And then the glossary is here. So I do want to say that incomplete just means that there might be information in CalPADS that did not, the CTC, which is the California Teaching Credential website, may not have pushed that data quickly enough into the CalPADS data, so it's just incomplete. Ineffective doesn't mean that the staff is ineffective. It means that a staff might have a provisional internship permit, a short-term staff permit, variable term waivers, or substitute permits. Out of field just means that we might have a general education teacher that might be in the process of, let's say, getting their special education credential, or short-term waivers, or an emergency bilingual authorization. So we have some of that, and then the rest of them you can read on your own. But I just wanted to clarify the particularly incomplete, ineffective, and out of field doesn't necessarily mean what a normal person, like a regular person, might think. That it's based all on credentials. Okay, then the priority 2 is implementation of state academic standards. We use MTSS as a framework to continue to support different supports within our system to ensure that we are teaching the state adopted standards, the Common Core state standards. And as you can see, that we continue to look at core instructional minutes and common formative assessments. I mean, we have great teacher leaders that are on our team that help us with this work. as I mentioned, with the Dibbles Aid and the literacy efforts that we have. And there you're going to see the analysis that we are using to support this work. This includes our DEI committee, MTSS, SST manual, and curriculum implementation and design. Okay. The next priority continues to show you our self-reflection tool. So we are scoring a 4. As you know, Superintendent Lee Alva, I use this, I'm not going to say, but I do use the old peanut butter in the pantry, and we have done an amazing job of clearing the old peanut butter, which to us, it means the curriculum that hasn't been updated for over a decade. When I arrived here with 5 years ago, we had some curriculum that was 20 years old. And so we have still some curriculum that we do need to update, such as some curriculum, both in elementary, middle, and high school, all in elementary, middle, and high, but we've done a pretty good job at updating and adopting new curricula for our students and our staff. And so we are not at the level 5 yet, but we are getting there, and we're making slow progress to having full implementation of the state academic standards. Priority 3 is around parent engagement. And for this year, we have used Panorama Survey. We have decided to sunset Panorama because of the cost. And we're going to start using the free Google survey up for these next 3 years of the LCAP, because it's just, again, fiscal sustainability is another goal in the LCAP. So we're trying to cut whenever we can on certain services that might be easy for us to analyze, but I think we're techy enough where we can use some of the tools that are free out there to engage in parent engagement. So again, we'll continue to analyze survey data from our parents, and as you can see here, we did meet the objective. We had 227 parents respond, and we had an increase in the 3 areas of the survey: barriers to engagement, school climate, and family engagement. And then here we have school climate, and I did want to just mention, just overall, that this new LCAP, we are going to purposefully use 1-year-old data, because it's become very difficult, as you can see, when we're bringing you the LCAP, the school year is still in session, so the metrics are hard to share with the San Mateo County Office of Ed. So we are going to keep 1-year-old data to ensure that we have accurate data to present to you when it comes to the June LCAP public hearing as well as adoption. So under school climate here, you are going to see that our students, 59% of students feel that they belong, and we'll continue to use our California Healthy Kids Survey to measure student engagement and student sense of belonging. Particularly, so I do want to focus on some of the actions that our team, our principals, our site leaders, our district leaders are using. Some of the actions include MTSS training, PBIS training, the implementation of our ladder goals, goal 3 and 4, and social emotional learning professional development. Broad course of study here. Again, we're looking at registrar's records as well as California dashboard, looking at not only graduation trends, but also trends of students attending UC-CSU courses, looking at CTE and looking at CTE pathways as well. And keep in mind that the California dashboard is updated around December every year. And so I'll be back to present to you what that data looks like throughout the year. But for now, this is kind of a summary of where our local indicators are. We'll continue to prioritize gap areas. These are some of our next steps, and focus on the objectives of growth in the upcoming years. And I think that's the last.
Thank you.
This item most requires a public hearing.
Let the hearing begin. Any comments, questions? Hearing ends. For the board, any comments, questions?
I have some, and I will say, thank you, because your presentation actually makes it like a lot more coherent. I have to say, like looking through this LCAP template format and the indicators format, I find it so hard to understand the content of what you're doing because of the state's formatting. I know it's back to my point about all these reports you have to do with all this detail, and it looks like, it seems like, oh, great, 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 all this detail, but it's incomprehensible to a board member who has been studying this stuff for almost a decade now. So I'm glad that we have our strategic plan, because I think that's a much more, as you said, like the way people talk kind of format. So I do have some questions, and I apologize because I'm gonna have to, it took me hearing you explain to fully understand, so I don't have them all prepared as I usually do in advance, but it does seem like going back to the LCAP, like the plan part itself, it does seem like you followed the content from the strategic plan, and we talked about a lot of that in detail already. You have some like new content in there, updated pieces, which I think are great. I really appreciate, and Amber and I actually had a email conversation with a teacher about some program strategies that really help kind of establish tier 1 ways for students to belong. And so I feel like a lot of some of these goals to pertain to, students really feeling like they belong in school. So I appreciate the different culturally responsive trainings, staffing, diversification that you described in terms of, different ways of making our students feel like they belong here and that it can be safe to learn and try things and make mistakes. So yeah, let me just glance through. The plan, see if there's anything else. And if anybody else has anything else, feel free to jump in.
Yeah,
I catch
while
the
you're
next one.
scanning, I know that on the sustainability piece, we've talked about one of the pieces that I believe early on when we were talking as a board, we talked about sustainability and programming, and that seems to have dropped off. It didn't make it into like the final cut with the strategic plan. And so I just want to kind of keep that in mind as we're keeping all the balls in the air, where we do need connectivity between elementary, middle, and high school in some pipelines. That's something we need to stay mindful of.
I think also related to that to some extent, but also to the email conversation Amber and I were having with one of our teachers is thinking, and I think you captured this somewhere in here, so I'm just going to say it and you can just say it's there. Something around how, like, given the realities of our situation around increasing financial stress, which is not going to go away and probably get worse as our costs continue to increase while our revenues stay more flat. But also with declining enrollment coming, like thinking about different ways that we can change our tier 1 models to account for that. So be it like mixed age classrooms or looping students with teachers, like, I'm not going to come up with the strategies, but around like kind of given that our landscape is changing, thinking about how to change like the learning models that we have. I even, think about it a lot in terms of and I think again, you address this, but I'm just gonna say it so you can kind of figure that out. Around the learning communities where we have across our school district, I think that's where we've seen some of our greatest successes. And you talked about like CTE at Half Moon Bay High School. I think that agricultural science program is one where students feel they belong because they're with a kind of a smaller cohort of students, this smaller group of 2 teachers that they tend to have multiple classes with. So it's kind of like looping. And it's like they go on, there's FFA, which is an extracurricular program that's closely tied to it. So it's also, they hang out and do fun trips outside of school too. So I find that kind of learning communities model, which exists also at Pilarcitos Alternative High School, it exists kind of through sports, but that's not really a learning community. It's more of,
It is in music for 4 years in.
and so I was talking about sports, but I think it does exist around performing arts as well, to a large extent too. So I think having kind of expanding on that kind of model, I think could also be a potential opportunity that doesn't really necessarily cost anything. It just means that you're kind of like forming nuclei of like academic and social belonging, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to share that as, again, like a tier one thing that we can do around the belonging and academic improvement, and whole child kind of like fits in with a bunch of those things.
Can I read?
Yeah.
Or no?
No, go ahead. I was going to move on, so go ahead.
If we look at the let's just say the layers of support, we do include some of the thematic units and incorporate so what you mentioned. So it is in the sub actions that is included what both President Hines and Trustee Ling you mentioned. But yes, thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to confirm that it is included.
That's what I figured. I would give you the feedback. You say, yep, we got to hear, because two other things, I think you talked about, like something about removing barriers for learning. And I think about things like equitable grading practices, standards-based grading practices, like looking at what kids are learning, the quality of it, less a little bit than the timing of it. And I think there's a lot of different ways to make kids feel like, you know, they can focus on the learning and it's okay to make mistakes without being penalized. And if they do make mistakes, they have chances to learn. You know, again, I'm not going to dictate what those strategies are, but some things I hear about are like retaking tests or not grading homework or allowing opportunities for homework to be done later or excusing assignments, things like that, you know, that I hear about. But I just want to say, like, something around kind of shifting the focus from grades to learning for students, I think could be also a way to remove the barriers, which is, I think, one of the things that you have in there also. And like related to that too, I think you brought up the thing about credit recovery, and I think that's great. And I think, and I'm not sure specifically our practices around this, but I think ensuring that we give kids ample opportunity to make up courses that they not only fail, but that they get Ds in. Because when we look at our A to G rates that are not fantastic, getting a D in the class is a big barrier to A to G, especially if it's in one of the 4-year requirements like English. Like, that's really tough. So thinking about credit recovery, making sure there's flexibility to proactively offer to kids that if they get a D, they can take it over. Again, I say this, I'm not exactly sure what our practices are, but also that they can have flexibility, that they could like pretty much always take it and have ample time to finish the online course, which I think typically they, like on Edgenuity at least, there's not a time frame by which you need to finish it. So, hey, try it at home over the summer. If you don't finish it over that summer, finish it sometime your junior year, for example. So it's just a little bit, again, these things cost nothing, but they give kids the little boost that they need, and then they can, you know, have their application ready for UCCSU if they so choose to do it. So, and if you have, yeah.
Yes, our team is constantly meeting and collaborating, and Mr. Barnes and I have had those conversations of making, and Mr. Boysen at the high school, of not waiting for 11th graders to say, okay, now it's summer school,
Freshmen.
all of you are
Freshmen.
Indigenous. If we start with freshmen.
Start when they're freshmen.
Start with the freshmen.
Because then the rest of the 3 years aren't a nightmare for them.
Correct. So we're having conversations, Mr. Boysen, Mr. Barnes, myself, in increasing those opportunities so that it doesn't become so stressful for our children right now in 11th grade.
And that's when they miss the mark then. If they wait till later to make it like, okay, now do 3 Edgenuity things, like there's not gonna happen. Okay. I have more comments. This is one of the most important things we do of the year, so I think we need to talk about it.
Go right ahead, but I also want a bio break very soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's bio break after this. Similarly, in terms of removing barriers, I think giving kids opportunity to take concurrent enrollment courses, I think is important. I know dual enrollment has been something we've been working on. If that's going slowly with our current partner, I think we have opportunities through the CCAP agreement to work with other partners as well to bring on to your point, engage classes that students are going to be engaged in. And if there are opportunities to build on what we have right now, things around environmental science or other hands-on learning that aren't, maybe we don't have CTE solutions for right now, there could be opportunities with, let's say Cañada College runs environmental science programs, they run engineering programs that could dovetail with our computer science programs, for example. So I think, we kind of can get maybe what we need elsewhere if it's necessary, if things are moving too slowly, but also with concurrent enrollment, again, if we release kids to take whatever classes they want to take and need to take, that frees up our resources to focus on students that need our help most.
I agree.
Oh yeah. Lastly, too, I think just, we've seen a surge in students with mental health issues and conditions over the last few years, especially with the pandemic. We have a lot of kids with anxiety and depression and post-traumatic stress and different kinds of traumas. I think there are ways that we can support them through 504 plans. So making sure we have rigor around that process, I think, is important, but also, frankly, there are so many kids with these issues, again, where we can make those accommodations tier 1. It'll save everybody a lot of headaches.
Yeah, instead of having to go through the
Yeah,
504.
going through a
just catch
504
them
is
at 504.
expensive and it's like a pain and difficult. But if we can kind of put our shoes, assume, I don't know, we haven't seen that Healthy Kids survey yet for this year. Yeah, that I just checked too. But where we can assume at least half our kids have anxiety and depression at any given point. I'm going to say as a parent, just seeing the community and building our tier 1 work around that, and that it impacts things like, grading practices that we talked about earlier. I think that's great. And my last comment is, I'd say it's a bummer on the indicators thing that you only have the year-old data. Like, it sucks that you can only look at things that's like a year old. That's really honestly useless and goes back to my point again, why I went to Sacramento and say, you guys are making us do these reports that are, frankly, that's kind of useless. Like, that's so old. Other than we can see, unfortunately, I know it's not you. And as I'm saying, like, the system is like, but yet you're spending all this time. You have to spend all this time to do that. Israel has to spend all the time to do that, right? It is interesting, though, to see, even though it's data, it's old, now we're seeing the decline in the Healthy Kids survey, like those results aren't great. So I do want to make sure, and now may not be the time to go into that in detail, but that we do actually raise the visibility of that, like all those numbers about feeling like they belong and
Again, those could be study sessions as we go in, as we
that's
start
why,
to regroup in
that's
the
why I'm
next year.
mentioning it now to say it's not the time or place for it to kind of go into detail now, but that's to me a flag that we should dive into that a little bit more closely.
Okay.
So I mentioned it quickly, but this is version 1 of the LCAP. Already we met this Monday with San Mateo County partners, and we have some changes that we need to make. And then it happens again, even though it gets approved at the end of June, there are sometimes minor changes, but you're going to see some major changes between now and the next board meeting. I won't go into as much detail, but I'll call out the major changes that we made.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, clarification, please. There was an interest in a study session around healthy kids or school climate in general, or?
I would suggest student outcomes, and we can probably define that a little bit more because that's a big category.
And so I hear 2. Do I hear 3? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for acknowledging that, Superintendent Lealva. If I'd like to make a motion, we have a 7-minute bio break.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
See you in a few.
Years ago, we started to LCAP, and when we LCAPed, it was required that the new funding mechanism, the local control and accountability plan, would have an LCAP that had to be backed up by the budget. It required that there was a public hearing for the LCAP and a public hearing for the budget. So this is the presentation of the proposed budget that goes with the LCAP that we are going to be having of the next year. So next slide, Rosie. So this requirement requires that we have unaudited actuals and that we have all the expenditures and the revenue in the LCAP. This has been published and it has been available since June the 3rd, June the 4th. So it has been available to the public. Today is the day that the public can come in, and LCAP can be then modified in accordance with what any input that it is collected. As it will be brought to the board for approval, both the budget and the LCAP at the June 27th. This budget has been focused, next slide, Rosie. This budget has been developed looking at the opportunities for savings and any reductions that we could look at for the 24-25, 25-26 school year, and that we can carry through that tool that we have as a fiscal stabilization plan. So that's a live document to capture any savings and or reductions. And of course, it requires that administrators optimize all resources for savings, and it also requires that administrators look into building master schedules that are commensurate with our declining enrollment. You saw that today we are serving 2,652 students. That is the enrollment that we have right now. And that we look very careful at retirements and any attrition that could be then to look into the number of people, number of staff that is going to be serving those students. Next slide, Rosie. All budgets are as good as the assumptions, but we have a challenge in California. It's called volatility. We have had very volatile revenues, 2021, 2022, high revenues in the state of California, 2023, not so good, 2024, not so good. So we, in our district, are a mirror of things that happen out there. Our reality is not directly as that because our reality is linked to tax revenue, and Leticia has already told you our volatility of going a district that is flipping back and forth and the challenges that come with that. These assumptions right here are the assumptions that came from the May revised California budget. It's also part of what it has been legislated. Some of those, the CalSTRS, CalPERS have been legislated. So it's a composite of all of those things coming together. And all of this is what we feed into the LCFF calculator, the local control funding formula calculator. We feed this, and this would determine then if we are then going to be a basic aid school district or an LCFF school district. So these are what have gone into the assumptions that have gone into the budget, the proposed budget. The next slide, it's another set of assumptions. We have looked into assuming that we're going to be getting a 2.5 increase in the tax revenue. We had traditionally been going into a 2% assumed tax increase. But what did I use early? Volatility. It has been up and down. It has been all over the place. And the stories we have had in here before, we have said when we expected 4 and got 1, and et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, but we are assuming that we're expecting 2.5 increase in tax revenue, but also to square our budget, we had gone and taken some very substantial reductions into our maintenance and operation budgets to the tune of about $450,000. 400. So when we do that away from the classroom like this, we still have to maintain 8 campuses. 8 campuses, and that is something that as we move forward, yes, we assume that right now from our budget, and then I'll show you in a second how that looks like. And we also have looked into like what we know right now for CalPERS, as you saw in the previous slide. You know what we know about the energy and the cost of health and welfare. So we have looked at some of those things. That's what we know. We have also have other situations where we need to look into the cost of the excess liability fund that we are part of in alignment with Assembly Bill 218. That is going to be for us about 151K, and then we assume right now that it'll be an ongoing 75K. We have looked into this 2024-25 budget adjusted to salary increases as per the fact-finding recommendations. That is, I mean, that budget in the next slide, prepared like this, is does not have all of the recommendations there, but there is room for those recommendations as you look into the unassigned. That if whatever ends up being what it finally is operated, is not in there right now, but there is room for that was recommended in there. So this is, as you see, it looks we are meeting all of our 3% statutorily required reserve, and that's how it would look like for now. That's a proposed budget. That's a proposed budget with those assumptions that I went through there. Now, what's our next steps, Rosie? Our next steps would be to conduct a public hearing, and also with for this proposed budget, and the final LCAP and budget will be brought to the board for approval at the June 27th, and then once it's approved by the board, then we will be having all of this documentation to the San Mateo County Office of Education for their approval by July 1st. So that is a proposed budget, and are there any questions? It's a public hearing, yes.
I have my mic on, sorry. Thank you very much, Dr. Contreras, for bringing this to us. And I just wanted to clarify that what we see on this budget does not take into account any of the negotiations and salary changes and what we would be looking when we come out of negotiations. So thank you. Just wanted to acknowledge that for the public.
That is correct. Thank you.
So it doesn't have any of the stuff on the prior slide, the 2.5% increase in tax, the 450,000 in cuts.
There is room on in there for that, but they are not part of the budget.
Okay, I was
Because we
confused
could
because
not
it
put them in
says
there
our
because they're-
budget has now been adjusted to support, but I was like, this
But
can't
if you look at the
be
bottom
what
line, it does not have the
Yeah.
6% that's been offered and showing how it
Okay.
plays out 3 years out. And we do know that there are cuts required, and we'll let all of that play out through negotiations and then expect to see an update with the final end numbers once negotiations are complete.
It will only be there once negotiations are complete.
Right.
So to clarify, that you have proposed budget assumptions on, I don't know, slide 5 includes an expected 2.5. Can you go
Yes.
back to that slide? Yeah, so that all has been done into the budget, right?
Yes, this budget does reflect
Yeah.
the expected 2.5% increase. It does reflect
The cuts.
the cuts of $450,000.
That's what to clarify.
Yeah.
So in other words, the cuts, everyth's been done that's shown here except
Raises.
the compensation increases.
Correct.
But the budget does reflect the the salary increases from the fact-finding report. What it does not reflect is
No.
anything,
No, it doesn't.
No.
That does not have, does not consider the fact-finding. It has room,
It made room for
it
it.
made room for it.
Oh, in
That's
the-
why it's 6.7 at the
Got
end
it, got it,
instead
got
of
it,
like
okay.
0.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what, yeah, that's what,
If
that's why it's
only,
confusing.
if only those numbers
only-
had that in
If
there.
only, that would have been
And we
nice,
had
yeah.
a little bit of savings.
So that's what, so I guess let me recap then. So everything we see on slide 5, so you've adjusted this budget and that colorful picture reflects 2.5% increase in property tax revenues every year.
Correct.
For that time period. Previously, our estimate was 2.0. So I want to just acknowledge that like this, so, because I've had some questions from people in the public, like, where did you just come up with this money? You had it all the time. Why didn't you make this offer in the first place, right? And to be clear, I'm going to use a slightly pejorative term, so I apologize in advance, but you kind of tortured the budget to make it work, right? You increased the revenue assumption from 2.0 to 2.5. You built in to $450,000
And
of
to that
cuts.
point, we've come up with 1.5 before.
Yeah, we've
So
had-
even that's
yeah.
risky.
That's risk, 2.0 is risky because we had 1.5% increase previous years. Now we're up to 2.5, so more likely we're not going to hit that. I just want to say we took on risk. Hopefully Mary Beth and her friends will do a really good job and sell houses, but like, we don't know exactly. It's not entirely up to them. Number 2, you built into this budget a cut of $450,000 starting this coming year in 2 months, for which you can no longer make any staff reductions because we passed our March 15th deadline. I don't see that actually happening. I see probably having to make maybe a little bit this year and more in the subsequent years, right? And number 3, the state and local forecast, okay, that's fine. The 4, that's fine. And then the 5th line about the budget has now been adjusted to make room for the proposed compensation increases for all employees.
Can you please explain, Dr. Contreras, what that last bullet point means? Because it says, the
It's
proposed
confusing.
budget has also been adjusted to support salary increases per the fact-finding report. That can be very confusing to the public.
Yes.
Okay, let me clarify that one.
Yeah.
The bottom line, we cannot include in there anything until it is approved, until it's approved. Those balances as you have them, could support the fact-finding recommendations
For all employees.
for all employees, could
For all
support them.
employees, because the fact
But is
finding is
that-
only for the teachers' union, but
all
this is for
employees.
all
Fine.
employees. Okay.
But
If we make 450,000 in cuts.
we cannot bring you a budget that shows that because it is not real
Yeah,
yet.
it makes sense.
It's not real yet.
But all the rest of it is real, so, okay.
If it gets real, what will be brought to you, it would be how that would change.
Yeah. So the 2 big takeaways are you've adjusted the budget to increase to a more bullish revenue forecast, which we may or may not hit, and to have as yet undefined cuts of $450,000 starting this year and pulled through every subsequent year, which may or may not be able to happen. I'm just guessing in the next 2 months, so maybe it's a little bit now and a little bit more in the later years to make up for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to be clear. I mean,
Yes.
I'm on day 9 of the job. But given the fact that we've already passed that March 15th deadline. I just want to reiterate that around 85% of a budget is salary and benefits. So if you're looking to make such a substantial cut as $450,000, and you only can do that in 15% of your budget, you still have to pay your light bill, you still have to pay bills. We will make every effort to meet this, and I've already put the staff on warning that budgets are going to be cut, and we're going to go into very lean times. And I do come with experience of making those cuts. And it's going to be challenging. And we say that they're away from the classroom, but let's be honest, no cuts are ever truly away from the classroom. A real life example that I've given when I met with teachers is, and you can look at it up there, when you make $450,000 to a maintenance and operations budget, you may go from a schedule where classrooms get cleaned every day to a schedule where classrooms get cleaned every third day. And I want to be clear, I'm talking hypothetically right now because we've not sat down and actually figured this out. But in a school district, when we're about serving kids, any cut you make, either directly or indirectly, does affect children. So this is very challenging. What we mean that they're away from the classroom means we're not cutting staff right now. But cuts like this do impact our students and our staff.
And it could be that if there are open positions, you might
Oh,
look at
positions
those.
that don't get
Yeah,
filled?
Yeah, you're not cutting staff that is filled in place right now, because like, even if you wanted to
But we
legally,
may
you
not
can't.
backfill.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's gonna be, there are gonna be a lot of hard decisions to be made in order to afford this offer. That's what I just want to make sure it's really clear, that this is not something that is taken lightly or could be done, but hopefully, if we can find a way to make this happen from the fiscal perspective, hopefully we can find a way to close this round of negotiations. So again, as I said earlier in my opening comments, we can pay teachers and counselors and all employees their back pay that they will get once that's raised. If our HR can recruit with an increased salary schedule, it's going to make it a lot easier, and the increased health benefit for new teachers hired after 2011. That will make it easier to recruit high-quality candidates. So again, it's like we all want the same thing, keep highly qualified teachers and staff and administrators, I would say, on the coast side. So we'll make it easier if we can kind of close things up and move forward and making things happen. And good luck figuring out that $150,000.
Thank you.
If I may reiterate the fact that we're looking into the revenues for 24-25. We're assuming certain revenues for 24-25. We will not know until P1 in November if that 2.5 is close enough, and that is not even the certainty in November. Certainty comes with P2 in the spring, in the spring of, and that is for the revenues, the upcoming revenues.
Which is exactly why you want a reserve, which was going to be my next question, which is to say, at the end of the day, if we were to come to agreement and also, raise everybody by the terms that the fact finder came up with, then what's left in 3 years? Do you know that number off the top of your head? Like, it's 6.7 million now, which seems nice, but actually it's like not even 10%. So we should have more than that reserves anyway. We're gonna spend most of that, but do you happen to know what's gonna be left?
I don't remember right off the top of my head, but you're exactly right.
Not much.
You start looking at, and it goes
Yeah, it's gonna go
into
down.
the 3 years.
Let's,
I just want to say, too, that I know that you haven't realized what all these cuts are going to be, but I know it took a lot of work to figure out, to get to this point where you think we can do this. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, because I know you guys have worked so hard to be able to come up with, being able to agree with what the fact finder had to say. So thank you for that.
Jennifer has worked very, very hard on this.
And I also do want to acknowledge Jennifer and Dr. Contreras, because it was very clear from my directive that it is the board's priority to honor our staff and our teachers and to honor that fact-finding report. So they have been working really hard to put in cuts that we don't know how we're going to make, but we knew that this was important to you all.
Thank
Great.
you.
And I know you had a lot of other efficiencies in terms of moving things around, like to restricted funding and just maximizing like all the little pockets you can. I know there's been a lot of that behind the scenes too, and that's hard work. I think about it as like thinking about families that are higher income or families that are lower income. Families that are higher income can manage to just buy the things they want, right? When you're low income and you're not shopping on sales and you're not shopping on bulk discounts and you're not shopping the coupons, like, you know, you're not, your hand to mouth, it's really hard. And I feel like, to Leticia, to your point earlier about we're kind of in that weird lower middle zone where we don't qualify for the big fat concentration grants that other school districts get from the state, and we don't get the $4,000 a year in parcel tax per parcel that Menlo Park does. $4,000 a year, and we're scraping around 150 or 200 a year. It's really hard because then like every penny counts, and that actually takes more work. So it's the ultimate irony. But again, as Amber said, I appreciate all the work you guys have been doing to make that happen, to find every single quarter. It takes a lot of work to do that. It doesn't come easily, but you know, if we can make this work, I think we'll all be happy. So.
Okay. Can we move on now, please, to item 5C, presentation and public hearing for, 5D, updated information on expected CUSD California state aid participation.
Okay, now let's change to another type of funding. And 2 years ago, we had CFW coming and evaluating what would be the potential aid that we could get California. From the portables that we are now demolishing, we're about to demolish as we get into, so they're going to be giving us Greg Norman from CFW, who's a partner in state aid. He's going to be coming up and giving us an update of what we could expect. Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Doctor.
Good evening, trustees, Superintendent Dr. Contreras. It's my privilege to address you tonight. Like Dr. Contreras mentioned, I came before this board a couple years ago to give you a preliminary view of what your eligibility would be. And this would provide you a planning tool as you go about distributing amongst various projects your local bond fund monies, your local general obligation bond funds. So this will be a roadmap so that you can sequence the work with your local bond funds to maximize the amount of money that is available and that the district qualifies for from the partnership with the state. So what this does is that it makes your dollars go much further. So that is the basis of the presentation tonight, but let's go over what the program is so that everyone can get back onto the same page. So the state of California has what is called the School Facilities Program, the SFP. This is a probably a fourth or fifth generation of the state program. It is a grant program, whereas previous programs were lease purchase programs. So this is a grant program. And it requires that a district must demonstrate that they have eligibility at certain specific school sites within the district in order to access the funds from the state. We're going to be primarily concentrating on the modernization eligibility that the district has. The modernization program is defined as such: any permanent classroom on any campus that is 25 years old or older qualifies for a modernization grant, and any portable classroom that is 20 years old or older qualifies for a modernization grant. The state applies a per pupil grant amount to each one of those qualifying classrooms, and that amount is adjusted at the January State Allocation Board meeting to reflect inflation. So all of the numbers that we're getting ready to go over are the most current information pertaining to the eligibility that you have at each one of your campuses. Okay? So there are several important things that you must do as you decide which projects to proceed with, and that's where we come in to provide you with consultation as strictly from a eligibility perspective. There may be political concerns that would lead the board to put one particular campus over another and not take into account that another campus is currently eligible for modernization. But it's our job to provide you with that information, and then you guys decide, do we move forward with a project that is more politically sensitive or the project that currently has the eligibility. Okay. So let's go to the second slide, Rosie. See, I picked up on the Rosie thing. All right, so I'm quite sure this was distributed to you in your board packet, and it's probably on your screen now. So this is a outline of all of the campuses within the district. So I do come bearing good news, and that is that the district is eligible today for $9 million worth of state grants in order to improve their campuses. So that may mean bringing classrooms up to 21st century, adding NPR, taking out portables and replacing them with more permanent structures. So with modernization, the campus that generates the eligibility, those funds must be spent on that campus. So you can't take the eligibility from one campus and apply it to another campus under modernization. Okay? So the match, the modernization program is a 60-40% program partnership between the district and the state. The state bears 60% of the total project cost, and the district matches it with their 40%, which is typically coming from your general obligation bond. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, so pretty straightforward. So Dr. Contreras had contacted me several weeks ago, and he wanted an update so that the professionals that are helping the district to manage these projects would have a roadmap as to how to move forward strictly as it relates to eligibility. Okay. Now, let's go to the next slide, Susie. So, in order to get in line for funding, the project must have the Division of State Architect approval, DSA approval, and also must have CDE approval. A lot of districts will get DSA approval, but they neglect to get CDE approval. So in order to get in line for funding, you must present both approvals to the Office of Public School Construction. The wait list is approximately 15 to 18 months. Right now, the program is on a date order received, so first come, first serve. If a new bond passes in November, that may change, but right now it's on a first come, first serve basis. The state is technically out of money, but there's enough money where districts can't charge level 3 developer fees, which would be a disaster for the state's economy. Level 3 developer fees is where a district can charge off to a developer 100% of the cost to build a school in your boundaries. So the state is doing any and everything to avoid that occurrence. So what has happened, just again, some background information for you. The last statewide bond was Proposition 51, which was passed in 2018. There has not been another successful statewide bond. The reason that the program is still processing applications is that in days gone by, those wonder years when the state had budget surpluses, the governor took the budget surpluses and put them into the school facilities program. So right now, there's $1.9 billion that was transferred over during those wonder years, if some of you remember that television program. So from the wonder years, $1.9 billion is there. And the hope is that the statewide bond measure will pass in November. The governor is due to sign it on June 27th in order for it to make the ballot. Right now, there's two competing vehicles. Both of them are proposing anywhere from $13 to $14 billion ask of the public. One of the measures is TK through 14, and the other one is TK through 16. CASH, which is a bargaining unit, an advocate for school districts, stands for Coalition for Adequate School Housing, has come out strongly in favor of the TK through 14 and opposes the TK through 16. The history of the state bond is that it's only failed twice. And each time that it has failed was when the state colleges and the universities were included. For some reason, the voters just will not vote for a bond measure that includes the state colleges and the universities. And the polling, the initial polling that has been conducted by the OPSC is bearing that out, where the TK through 16 is not polling nearly as well as the TK through 14. Okay, so the hope is that it will pass. Those funds will then be available for you to submit your applications and get your portion of the statewide bond measure. Okay, so DSA, CDE approvals, then the superintendent or other OPSC designated individuals can sign off on any of the paperwork. We prepare it, you guys review it and sign off on it. We interface with all of the regulatory agencies, answer any questions in order to get the application process. So that's the way that it works. And any questions?
Thank you, Greg. We appreciate your being in here. And as you can see, is getting in line and then getting the professionals to help us carry it through. And Roger and Greg will be in contact to make sure that we get those buildings and get potentially, as of now, $9 million.
So my question for clarification, can it go against any projects that have begun, or does this have to be new projects?
It is the modernization that we are currently having.
That is nuance. So any former. They can't hear you. Oh, okay. That is nuanced. Any former projects, you can definitely go back and get the eligibility that was yours. So say, for example, you did a project in 2017 and an application was never submitted. So what we do is the analysis of what the eligibility was in 2017, and then we apply it accordingly. So it's not only for future projects, and working with Dr. Contreras, we can identify former projects and seek reimbursements for those projects as well.
And so for the elementary sites where we have the higher dollar projects right now that we're just breaking ground on, those will be eligible.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Just want to clarify.
I have a question. Can you talk a little bit about the getting in line? Have all the people that got in line for 2018 been paid?
Yes, so they are now on 2020 and 2021 APLA. applications.
So if I understand correctly, when we get in line, we're behind the 2020 and the 2021 applications?
Yes, and any ones that have, so there is a workload list.
So what is the reality of actually, when we get in line behind everyone else who got in line before us that hasn't been paid, of us actually getting paid?
It's 100%. The fact that it's going to be 13 to 14 billion will by far take care of all of the applications that are currently in line and will address for the next 5 or 6 years any new applications that would be submitted.
So it's 100% if this new bond in November passes, not ours, the state one. And it is polling very well. So I think they are hoping. So yes, it's contingent on that passing. So I think
Yes, the applications that are
right
current-
now, there's not enough now. They run out
Yes.
of money now. We definitely wouldn't get it now. But if that 15, I think it's like 13, 14, I heard
Yeah,
15,
13
but
to
like something
14
like that,
billion.
yeah, it's billion. If we get in line now, sounds like we have a good chance. Even with
Yes.
all the applications from 2020 to mid-2024 in place. So,
And
hey,
what
9 million
role
is
does
good.
CFW play in that process?
So we deal with all of the regulatory agencies. So we develop what the eligibility is at each one of the sites. We deal with the CDE as far as opening up the CDE box and making sure that the necessary forms, like the 4.08 form, is filled out correctly and submitted. We deal directly with the OPSC project manager on any questions that may arise based upon the application. And obviously, we interface with the architect on a very consistent basis.
And can I ask, are these the pupil counts that they look at? What are the grade levels for that for a unified school district? Is it like TK or does it include pre-K? I'm just curious if like it includes the pre-K students as well.
So for the loading standard for the state from TK through grade 6 is 25 per each classroom. Now, your teacher's contract, it could be 30, 40, whatever the case may be. But the funding is based upon the state's loading standard
Pre-K.
of 25. For the higher grades, grades 7 through 12, the state loading standard is 27.
Okay.
They then apply the pupil grant to those numbers.
Okay, great. And so that just to confirm my understanding and follow up to Kim's question, like when we see Hatch Elementary, we have almost $8 million eligibility. That's like fantastic. It's amazing. We've done some recent work more around early education and after-school programs,
Yes.
facilities construction there. I don't know if that will be eligible or even like, maybe you mentioned like some work in 2017, which is probably the main remodel at that school site. But
Yeah.
like all that 8 million, that's really eligible?
Yes, yes.
That includes
And-
money we're putting in, that 8, right? So
Okay.
it's 4.7
okay.
from the state and 3.1
Oh, yeah,
from
this
us.
total state grant, okay, good, but still almost 5, yeah, thank you, 4.7 million, it's still pretty good.
So early education is key. A lot of districts are keying in on the transitional kindergarten classrooms.
Okay.
If you recall, and we did work with Dr. Contreras to try to get you some funding for the preschool TK and K full-day kindergarten grant program. There were 4 funding rounds that have already taken place. With the governor's revised, it will no longer be its own separate funding source. It will be integrated into the SFP. And it is anticipated that like CTE, which has typically on each bond measure a cutout of 500 million, and for charter schools, typically it's a cutout of another 500 million. We're anticipating that the preschool TKK will also have 500 million. So if you want to build transitional preschool TK or full-day kindergartens at any of your campuses that need it, this is an opportunity to do so. The big difference in probably how you're educating the students in the early education now is that they're probably in traditional classrooms, which is 960 square feet. Under this particular program, the project has to comply with Title V So that means that the classroom has to be 1,350 square feet, have internal restrooms for the children and a internal restroom for the teacher. If you're going for the preschool, in addition to having to qualify for Title V, preschool classrooms also have to qualify for Title 22, which means that there has to be sufficient adult bathrooms in the classroom so that the teacher doesn't have to leave the classroom and leave the students unsupervised. So the architect will design the classrooms that you're seeking the early education funds for to meet either Title V and/or Title V and Title 22.
This estimate includes TK to 12. Oh yeah, because I see total grade TK to 6 and then 9 to 12, but it does not include pre-K because we've done some pre-K, which in theory, I guess, if it's compliant with all those rules you just said, we could add that to this list potentially. It's not going to be a lot, but
So the numbers that you see there are only for modernization.
okay.
So your eligibility for early education would be
In
over
addition.
and beyond in addition
Okay, good.
to these dollars. And typically, you get $1 million per each classroom. That's
Okay.
what the state is giving out.
Well, I guess we can look into that too, because we just put in some more portables and stuff. I don't know if those would be eligible, but I don't know. I guess if they are, let's get that money too.
Yeah.
The reason why I wanted you to have an update on this is because it dovetails with the work that it is being done right now with the modernization.
Yeah,
Those new classrooms that Roger is looking out in there are meeting now those standards. So funding, state aid coming through, dovetailing with what it is currently being done, then getting all the numbers down and making sure, as Greg said, that we applied those funds to that are eligible. I guess the way to see it is like we're getting modernization at some kind of discount that is going to come later.
Greg, you mentioned something like you worked with us before for some preschool.
We put it, excuse me, I have been talking all day and I'm losing
I'm so
my
sorry.
voice. So I apologize for that. So I think it was round 2 that we submitted an application. So as I stated, the preschool TK full day kindergarten was its own separate pot of money. The state.
What was the status of that application? Did we receive the money?
No. So the state had $357 million available, but they received in excess of $1.4 billion in applications. So it's on a competitive basis. It's 80 points total that you can get. The first 40 points is a yes or no answer to whether or not you qualify for financial hardship. At that time, the district did not qualify for financial hardship. So we got 0 points for that, whereas other districts were getting 40 points. The second criteria, or the other 40 points, is on your free and reduced percentage. So if you have 100%, it's 40. If you have 80, it's maybe 32 points. And so what they do is they tally it up, and the districts that score the highest get their applications processed first until all the funds run out. So we submitted the application. Unfortunately, the application was not competitive.
So for this application, is it just first come, first serve, or is there other criteria?
Right now, it's first come, first serve.
No other criteria?
For the PSTKK,
No, for
the modernization.
Yes.
Yes, as long as you have the eligibility, which you do have. So it's first come, first serve.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when does the application period open up? Or is it already open?
It's already open, so people are already getting in line in anticipation of the bond passing in November. So just like what districts did in 2020, 2021, there wasn't any bonding authority. They still got in line. The governor went into his bags of tricks and provided money out of the surplus. So the fact that they got in line knowing that there wasn't any available money, they got rewarded. It doesn't cost you anything to get in line.
Now, you said 100% that we would get funding, correct?
100%.
You said, I asked you what the likelihood of us getting funding. You said it would be 100% that we would get funding?
Yes.
If the
for your
bond passes.
modernization.
If the bond passes,
the
yes.
state
Yes,
bond
the state
passes.
bond, yes.
Yes.
So if the state bond passes and we don't get funding, do you waive your consulting fees?
We don't get paid.
Oh, okay.
We're on a contingency basis.
Okay,
So
great.
we do all of the paperwork, all of the communication, all of the regulatory things. We only get paid if you receive an apportionment from the state that appears in the district's county account.
Great, thank you so much for clarification.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is item 5E, CUSD Fields Assessment Report.
During the spring, we met with a number of people across the district who were interested in the status and the condition of our fields. And particularly at the time, we were looking at the Hatch field. From there, we asked Verde to come and meet with us. We met with the group, and an assessment of all of our fields and what conditions they are right now and how they can be helped is what Verde conducted, and that's what we have for you today. Devin from Verde, it's here. Devin Conway from to do that presentation. And next slide, Rosie. We basically, in our community, our fields play a very pivotal role. Our community uses our fields, and our students are, as I said earlier, 2,652, but we have a traditional way in which our community comes and families and everybody works on the fields. We also have very strong partnerships with that have brought some private dollars, money that has come. We have been gifted as a district with wonderful facilities. That is the Boys and Girls Club that have brought some funding to get like the event center and the football field, etc. So those are facilities that were built with gifts from our community. So what Devin and his staff came and to do is come and meet with their steering committee and then take a look at what we could do or how we can plan for the future of our facilities. So here we go. Devin?
Good evening. Hear me okay? Okay. So, as Dr. Contreras said, we started this project in April, initiated by walking in one day all the sites, started at Fairlawn View and just worked our way south, did El Granada, then Hatch, then Cunha, then the 4 field areas at Half Moon Bay High School. And then in the afternoon, we met with the District Field Steering Committee, and attendees there included representatives of the Boys and Girls Club, the PTO of Hatch, Parks Department, which was online. It was both an in-person and a virtual meeting, as well as some school staff at Hatch, and then the local youth athletic leagues represented by primarily baseball, softball, and soccer. And then a few weeks after that, we developed our draft report on May 6th, and then gave a final draft, which is part of the packet on the agenda, May 28th. I got this right. There you go. So as part of the assessment, the recommendations are in the executive summary. We looked at, a recommendation was to reconstruct the existing grass fields at Fairlawn View and Hatch Elementary, have budgets that include both soft costs as well as, I believe it was a 20% allowance contingency, as it were, for design and construction. And that was roughly a little over 1.5 million each for Fairlawn View and Hatch to reconstruct those grass fields in their current configuration. We also looked at the second bullet should say El Granada Elementary School. That budget to redo that field's in much better condition. And we understand that the field footprint's going to be further reduced. It already has a couple classroom buildings. My understanding is additional buildings and a playground are going to be installed on that field footprint. And once that is done, some renovation, not as extensive as the other sites, we would recommend. If so chosen to be done, it's about $415,000, again, including some contingency and soft costs, i.e. design fees, et cetera. And then the turf field at Cunha, which is, I believe it was over 10 years old, is probably in the worst shape of all the synthetic turf fields. To replace that, dollars reflected for 25-26 school year, including a typical construction contingency, would be roughly $1.5 million to replace that turf field. The other component we looked at was the maintenance. I know that the district just recently purchased a new mower, which was, or is, would like to. I saw a quote for that anyway. They have one piece of equipment essentially in the district, and it is a large riding mower, which has seen better days. I did see a quote for a new mower, and that piece of equipment is probably past its life cycle, but it's still being in use. We did recommend a new mower and some additional field maintenance equipment, budgeting around $125,000 for that. And then we did recommend one additional grounds member, which I understand is always a challenge, getting more, not less, custodial staff or ground staff. The one thing I would note is for 3 staff members to maintain over 60 acres of school grounds, and that doesn't include the DO or the Kings Mountain, I believe. Just the 3 elementary schools, middle school, and high school. That's quite it's quite an undertaking, to the point where I think you're seeing the results of that challenge. And so, yeah, just real quick, kind of speed through this a little bit. The field assessment El Granada, one of the reasons that site's in the best condition, has the least amount of ground rodents. It actually has we did core all the fields and do soil samples. That one site actually has a gopher barrier 4 inches down, so it's prevented the ground rodents, which is great. It actually has a irrigation system in the field, but it's been turned off for several years. So I don't know how functional it is. It hasn't been working for several years, but it does actually have drainage on the low end of the field in the form of a couple catch basins. The only field that does have surface drains. And the field, it actually has pretty good grass coverage, and it actually has turf grass, which is unique to the other fields other than the high school softball fields. And it has a really good sand content. It's actually a very good, it would be a loamy sand in the USDA soil classification. That would be an excellent type of sand you'd want on a golf course, things like that. So that was unique to that site. Just a couple photos. In the right photo in particular, you can see where I cut through with my coring machine, the one piece of the grid, steel grid. Fairlawn View, that site does not have an irrigation system. It did at one point. It's been abandoned. The water system actually has been disconnected. There is no backflow on the site anymore, but you can see occasionally an old irrigation head. It's very uneven. I saw it actually after it was mowed the day before, and it was still at its best, it was about 2 inches high, with most of the grass was 3 to 5 inches high because of how uneven it is. The animals have generally taken over the field in a good chunk of areas. It would not be considered what I would say a safe field from the kids being out there using it. It's a huge field too. That's one of the biggest problems. It just takes so long, a field like that at that condition, to maintain it regularly, especially with the environment out there. There's no drainage, and a lot of the school paving actually drains in the field, which exacerbates the situation. It doesn't just get nature's runoff, it gets other runoff as well from other spots. Yeah, ironically, even though the grass is pretty untamed, everything that is rooted into the soil, it's very mucky soil. It's got a lot of clay in it, but there's a lot of roots in there. So what is there is pretty stout. Hatch, which was, I think, as Dr. Contreras said, the purpose of kind of initiating this, as you probably know, they had construction go on that kind of underplowed some of the field and had wood chips and other stuff. I went by there before the meeting. It actually looks, I wouldn't say 10 times better, but it looks a lot better than when I walked it in early May. They scraped off the extra pile of wood chips. It's still a wood chip area. And they've mowed the field in preparation for the graduation. And it looks a lot better. It hasn't eliminated the issues with the field in that it has no irrigation, it has no drainage, a lot of gophers and ground rodents, a lot of soil that is not in very good condition. It's very uneven. There are pockets, though, over by the backstop in particular, where they have taken some extra TLC, and it looks a lot better. It looks more like a field, so to speak. But the biggest problem is to rehab that field. You really need to have an operable watering system, because you put a sod in there, it's not going to take. With the sole exception if you do it in the winter, which creates some other different challenges. I think one of the things is the field's bigger than it needs to be. You got a lot of grass like behind the backstop, things like that. It's not functional space. I think one of the things, if you do redo it, to look at the maintenance areas and minimize the areas to where the kids can have functional space and reduce the burden of the maintenance staff. I think that would work to your benefit in a couple different ways. Like I said, it's looked a lot better since I took these photos, but some of the real problems still persist. At Cunha, even though it's synthetic, we looked at all the fields. The field itself being 10 to 12 years old, it's showing its age. The nice thing about it is, other than some of the bare spots where the seams are coming loose and some of the older colored fibers, like sideline fibers and fibers around like the highway areas, like a penalty spot for soccer, the field has a drainage shock pad. It's an earlier drainage shock pad, but it is rendering that field safe from an injury standpoint in terms of a kid hitting hitting in the ground hard. It's a concussion shock attenuation pad. The other problem though is just the surface and the condition of seams, things like that, where you could trip. But I would say it's 2/3 unsightly, 1/3 that those seams can catch opportunities for cleats. And as there's less and less fibers, the cleats can get through and really start digging into the backing of the turf and start tearing it. But in my estimation, you could probably be on that field for another couple of years where it's really going to start going south on you. The nice thing is at that base, if you look at it from a engineering standpoint, it's in really good shape. The pad underneath, you should be able to reuse and not have to replace that. Those pads typically last 20 to 30 years. There's a 24-year warranty, so you're probably halfway through. So you should get at least one more turf cycle on that pad, which is nice. But that is something it's a chunk of change to replace a field of that acreage. It's a pretty good sized field. You can see upper left, just where it's one of the fibers is coming out at a seam edge. That's pretty typical. And the middle photo, you can see kind of that little circle in the foreground is where there was a repair. You can see on the right side, you can see going into the back, I don't know if there's not, but in the middle right image, you can see a seam actually where the turf fibers have come out. And then the two fields at Half Moon Bay High School are synthetic turf. The football field and the baseball field are in really good condition. Shockingly so for the baseball field. It's about 18 years. That was the first field that was donated, as I understand it, at the high school. It's about 18 years old. The infield has been replaced, but the outfield is in amazingly good condition. Again, all the fields, when they were done, there was great foresight to invest in pads. So these fields, as long as you can accept maybe some of the agedness of them and how they look aesthetically, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're aging gracefully, and they're put together well, and with the pads in them, they're safe. I think you're gonna, the baseball coach may beg to differ, but those two fields are definitely gonna give you several years more of wear. Doesn't mean you're not gonna do spot repairs here and there. I mean, we saw some weeds in right field, or grasses growing in right field just from the seeds blowing in. That's okay. I mean, gives it a natural opinion, maybe slows down the ball for the right fielder. Talked about largely that. We saw grasses in the football field. You see all the splotches in the image to the right, just due to grasses growing in. There are more weeds than grasses, to be honest, and they're troublesome to get out. But it's more of an aesthetic issue than a use issue. I mean, things like that, if you can prevent them or spray them out with, a environmentally friendly herbicide, that would always be nice. Softball fields are in excellent condition. They're obviously maintained by the school and probably community. They have an irrigation system. That's a huge help. They have good grading. There's actually no drainage on those fields. It's all sheet drainage, but they're very consistent, and they actually have pretty good soils, very close to what is at El Granada, which is helping with just natural percolation. And it has a quality turf grass, very similar to what is at El Granada as well. Just a couple photos. It's technically, looks like two fields. It's really one field with permanent fencing for the two outfields that are back to back.
Thank you, Devin. So we brought this to you, this report, so that you have a good idea of the condition of the fields across the district. So goes back to master planning and making sure that allocation of funds as the board deems, so that we can then continue to work with our partners, our community partners, and serve our students and the community. So it's information and possible master planning. Thank you. Do
Thank
you
you
have any
very
questions
much.
for Devin?
Just a question, I guess the master plan would take into account the construction projects right now at Fairlawn View and El Granada and potential future modifications at the DO site that would potentially require movement of a couple of the CCP and HEAL office and stuff over to that side, which sounds consistent from what Devin said about the size of the Hatch field and size of the Fairlawn View field. I'm not as familiar with the Fairlawn View field, but Hatch for sure is very large. I eyeballed it. It's several acres. So it sounds like, from your opinion as well as what's typically utilized by a school population of 550 or whatever it is probably gives us a lot of wiggle room to design a field there that accounts for potential other needs too. So that's good to hear.
In keeping with what Sophia said, I've got two questions. So one, for Fairlawn View, with a much smaller population, would it make sense to maintain a smaller field area there?
It would, yes. I mean, those two fields are
Yeah.
upwards of 4 acres. I mean, those are big,
Yeah.
big spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, those would be middle school level size fields.
Okay.
So for 500 or 300, I mean, it's,
200.
I
Yeah.
don't think every kid needs 500 square feet of recreation. space.
Exactly, exactly. And then my last question, because you did have the line item, and I had not paired the two, talking about a potential mower that we took off, but you had like mower and equipment. Was that, did you specify specific mower and equipment there?
In the report, no. Sorry.
Yeah.
In the report, I specified types of equipment, not makes and models.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
so like a new riding mower, it's a rotary mower, not a real mower, just type of how it's cut. An aerator, a slit seeder, a top dresser, basic equipment that most turf grass professionals would use to maintain fields. Not every school district has them, but it's a best practice if you're going to not sub out those duties and tasks to have that equipment in-house so you can do your basic recommended agronomic practices like, aerate, top dress, overseed where areas get overseeded. I mean, and obviously those practices haven't been done here largely ever, and the fields generally show that. I mean, if you don't have the money or the manpower or the knowledge or all those things, that stands a reason. But yes, that's included in the Kimberly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that's my only, consideration is just giving, 30 minutes ago, we were talking about budget and cutting $450,000 from maintenance and other areas, because I think it's obviously going to have to come from the other areas too. And having, of course, we know the investment in the staff, and having more maintenance support to help take care of the fields is essential. But just something that we need to keep an eye on, as well as the equipment. To be honest, if there's one-time equipment expenditures that we can have that save us staff time and costs, and honestly makes them happier and makes their job easier, more fun. $80,000 for a mower is 2/3 of a maintenance person for a year. If you can kind of make a case for having some cost efficiencies through these equipment purchases, then I think it's something to consider. And that's probably more for Jesus, Jennifer, Amber, all you guys. Well, thank you. That was very helpful and great to see. And I appreciate also, just to say a comment to the obvious, to see a systematic professional assessment that helps us guide our deliverables and your deliverables, and how we are really as effective as we can be with our bond funds as possible, and hopefully some state funds, is really smart and a good investment, and I'm grateful for all your work.
Thank you. The next item up is item 5F, approval of Chief Business Officer official contract.
You have the contract in your packet, and staff recommends approval of the CBO contract.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I can second it.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, comments? I'm delighted that, I just want to say that I'm delighted that we'll have continuity and expertise moving forward. Hiring Jennifer Marsh, we very much appreciated Dr. Contreras and his time here with Cabrillo, but feel that, and we feel that Jennifer Marsh will make an excellent CBO, and we are appreciative of this time of overlap that we were able to retain Jennifer. So I just wanted to comment on that. Any other comments, questions?
And I just want to comment, I think it speaks volumes to our organization that we are promoting from within. We're growing our own talent, and then her replacement is also from within as well.
thank you for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just emphasizing that too. Like, great to have Jennifer, Jesus. You have done so much for us, and we're gonna miss you. I just want to say you've given it all heart. I don't think most people appreciate the breadth and depth of all the work that you've done for us for the past 5 years through the pandemic. You got us through all those days of masks and ventilation and technology, and then came the return to classrooms, and you got us through all of that as well. And budgets, again, you joined us and had to cut $2 million. You've had to kind of keep us on track. It's not easy because, again, when you're running your gas tank close to empty, because that's the money that you have to fill up your tank, you can't fill up your tank. We're never, ever filling up our tank. We're the ones that go to the gas station. We have $10 in our pocket. We put the $10 in. We get to work. We get to the grocery store. We drop off the kids at school. We really hope we make it to the gas station again without asking our friends to push us. Sometimes our friends at FICMAT, our friends at the county have to help us push the car to the gas station and figure out how to get there and how to get our friends in the car, because we don't want to leave our friends behind either, right? You've done so much of that and more for us, and all with heart, all with care for the students first. And I can't just say how grateful we are for that. And we're overjoyed, of course, for Jennifer, and to have Jennifer with us. And she has big shoes to fill, and we will most certainly miss you very much and wish you all the best.
Yeah.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Passes 4-0.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is item 5G, consideration of a resolution to place a general obligation bond measure on the November 5, 2024 ballot. Do we have presentation? I've got 2 public comments. Presentation first or comments?
Presentation first.
Okay.
As the board has looked into the possibilities of a more funding, we have Superintendent McPertridge started to look into how this might look like and what would we need to do to get to the ballot. And we have had presentations before where Joe and Meredith came and forward, and now it is in here to look at these resolutions and see. He's in here to answer any questions that you might have regarding this.
Thank you, Dr. Contreras. Good to see everybody. As he mentioned, my name is Joe Crump. I think I've been here twice before. So I don't have a presentation per se. I mean, I could just kind of give a brief, sort of introduction again to the resolution. So this resolution will authorize the district to issue general obligation bonds in the amount of $153 million. The average tax rate will be about $54, with a maximum of $60 per 100,000 of assessed valuation. And we're projecting that there will be 3 series of bonds. Obviously, this can be adjusted based on board approval going forward, but that's kind of how we structure the bond, so that $153.4 million will be broken up into about 3 series. Yes, that's kind of an overview. Just in terms of the document itself, I know Meredith went over that. So there's kind of like 4 different parts. You have a lot of the legal language on the first several pages. Project list, I know you've seen before and gone over. Ballot language, which will appear to voters when they actually go into the voting booth. And then the tax rate statement, which gives voters information about the tax repayment of the bonds. So that's an overview. I know you've looked at this document before and reviewed it, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I know do we have first motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I can second it.
Okay. And before we do questions, we do have 2 public comments here. So Peter Tchaikovsky, please come forward.
Thank you. I'm a parent of a current and a former student in the district, and I would like to talk a little bit about this report that was presented to you on March 14th, and I assume that's informing your decision. I want to tell you why it's deeply flawed. First of all, it's important to know that the district paid $49,000 for this report. If we're looking for savings that don't affect the classroom, that's more than a tenth of your $450,000 right there. That $49,000 paid for 348 surveys. I'm not a math major, but I know that's more than $100 per survey. The surveys took about 12 and a half minutes, so that's about $500 per hour, except that over 40% of them were, according to this, text to web. That means for your $100 or whatever it was, they sent out a text message and someone then clicked on a link and answered some questions. So that's what you're getting for that. It has a 7.5% margin of error, which is greater than many of the findings in here. But there's really 2 very important things to notice about this. On page 7, this is the preliminary survey that was given to people. It gives information and then provides you with information about their responses to a potential bond measure. And then what you got for that $49,000 is they told in that 12 minutes the survey respondents some more information about the bond, and then measured the effect. And it seems to have increased it, the yes votes by, potential yes votes by 7%, below the margin of error. Except that if you look on page 11 of the report, one of the new pieces of information they gave was cutting the amount it would cost a taxpayer in half. It went from 60 to 30 per $100,000 of assessed value. So it's meaningless. They can talk all they want about what the bond would do. They told the respondents that it would cost half the amount, and only 7% changed their mind. The other thing that voters need to keep in mind is that the company that did the survey has a clear conflict of interest. They are bond issuers. They have a clear interest and potential profit to be made if the bond measure passes. They want you to put this on the ballot. Their business model relies on it. And then, you have talked a lot about workforce housing, and we know that that's what this bond is for. We've recommended videos and all sorts of things. Why is it buried in the potential ballot measure language? Why is it buried behind safety and facilities? You've got a $100 million bond. Huge portions of it are left. If there's safety issues, take care of them now. Don't tell voters that the money that is going for workforce housing is for student safety. Thank you.
Thank you. The next comment is from Jill Jacobson.
Thank you. I'm Jill Jacobson. I'm the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club of the Coast Side, but I'm speaking as a private citizen right now. I wanted to express my opinion that the bond language, as it looks like it will be going into the voter pamphlet, does not include athletic facilities. And as we've been working with the Hatch field renovation community, I feel very strongly that if the athletic facilities were listed in the bond language, we would be able to build a much stronger coalition on that bond. And so just as an individual, I don't know if it's too late in the process, but I feel that that's a real missed opportunity for us.
Thank you very much. We can go to questions and answers now.
So question first for, and maybe you're about to answer that, about the athletic fields. I know it's not in the, that short paragraph, because that has to be 75 words or less, but my understanding, I thought, and I was going to check the long list, but it should be somewhere in that long allowable list of things, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Do you mind if I grab a copy?
Yeah. And while you do that and check for that, I can say, I did talk with staff to understand better, because I think there's this perception that this bond is for housing, and it's not. This is a $150 million bond. This is not entirely for housing, right?
Housing's a small portion of it.
For anyone following the conversations about workforce housing, that is a project that would be paid 50%-ish by a bond, 50%-ish by COPs or certificates of participation, which is basically like a mortgage, the way you typically would build a home, for example. And that would be around, the last time I think we had Brookwood here, it was like, and again, accruing for it wouldn't happen right away, maybe $20 to $40 million out of this $153 something million. Other projects that we've talked about that, again, we're not committed to, we would require some updated facilities master planning. So this is not something to take like as permanent plan, but other projects that we've talked about that could potentially fit into here would be remodels or renovations at Half Moon Bay High School. We know it's in the probably better shape than other schools have been, which is why it wasn't prioritized as a major remodel, although over the years, things like roofing, HVAC, boilers have been replaced. So honestly, really boring stuff that no one sees have been fixed at Half Moon Bay High, but there's other more structural things that could definitely be improved. So if we estimate about $50 million for that, there's a lot more work we could do around early childhood education. Phase 3, Farallon View and El Granada, right? We've talked about that. We've talked about having a full kitchen at Half Moon Bay High School, a central kitchen at Half Moon Bay High School that could then be our resource for independently creating healthier food that isn't shrink wrapped and has to come over from the one vendor, over 92, from the one vendor that's like gonna answer our RFPs, because who wants to come over 92 and guarantee that you're gonna do that for $4.35 per meal? Not very lucrative. Other solar projects that we have, once we build Farallon and El Granada, Farallon View and El Granada, we're going to want to put solar on them again so they can have energy sustainability and resiliency. Those are projects that we talked about as well. I don't know that we had all the field work allocated to the current bond allocations, but I know that we also have some wiggle room with the current like Fund 40 or whatever. So I'm open to budgeting it with a new bond and making sure that the language allows us to do that. It didn't poll great, which is why I think it didn't end up in the little paragraph, the 75 words. But from my view, it will be imperative to have that in the language as a permissible activity. And I would look to the facilities field master plan, whatever you called it, to say maybe some of those things, 1.5 million here, 1.5 million there, we kind of accelerate at risk, because it did build in, Jesus did build in a good buffer for our facilities master plan program. So we can do a little bit at risk for the ones that are ready to do, maybe not the ones, I don't know if it's the ones actively construction or Hatch, to my mind would be kind of curious to see, can we get something done there? I don't know. So just to be clear, this is not a bond exclusively or even largely for workforce housing. So we need to dispel that myth. And then did that give you enough time to also look up Jill's questions? I think that was a really good one.
Yeah, so there is a bullet in B2. So it's the second to the last, which says, renovate, repair, replace, construct, maintain, and or install play fields, playgrounds, play surfaces, tracks, gymnasiums, multipurpose rooms, other physical education and athletic facilities, locker rooms, and all related improvements and equipment. Okay. So that kind of, just broadly covers athletic facilities.
So it's in the project list. We're good.
Yes.
I guess what I heard Jill saying was a point of curiosity if we could actually mention athletic fields. I know it's only 75 words, but that Exhibit A ballot label, because that is yes, some people will go in and read all of those details. Is that was there any consideration when this ballot label was generated to talk about athletics?
I don't
could
recall
comment-
if that was.
I can
okay.
comment on it because we did talk about it with Dale. And it was considered, but it wasn't, it didn't really move, or it might have even, I can't remember. We'd have to look back at that like little report that Peter was talking about. But that's why we do that report, so we understand from a polling perspective, because I love fields too, but I'm not all the voters. That's why you poll a representative sample of the voters, right? So we don't get stuck, frankly, in my bubble, Mary Beth's bubble, Kim's bubble, Carmen's bubble, Lizette's bubble, right? It's not about our little bubbles, but it's about a systematic way of understanding what voters in our community, a representative sample of voters in our community think. And it didn't float to the top, but I think there's flexibility in the conversations that we have with people. And certainly we're having those conversations here and now already about, what was it, $10 million or whatever it was in athletic fields.
Yeah.
So like clearly that's a priority for us. And that could be discussed in those conversations as well, because we don't have the full 10 million now, and we don't need the full 10 million now, but it would certainly be part of that.
As being part of the bonds project list.
Yeah.
Do we have other questions? Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a resolution and it requires roll call. Kimberly,
Aye.
Carmen,
Aye.
Lisette is absent today. Mary Beth,
Aye.
Sophia.
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
Thank you. And that brings us to the next item on the agenda. Let's see, I'm losing my numbers. Right, no, I know it's a partial tax, but it's 5H, public hearing and consideration of a resolution calling for approval of an education partial tax.
Yeah, so this, I know you've seen a prior version of this resolution. So I think the one major change is the amount has been updated since this was brought as an informational item to the board in, I think it was April. So I believe the amount we initially looked at was 185, and this measure would be for a parcel tax of 198, which would generate an estimated $2.14 million per year. Are there any questions?
So how much additional, oh, I'm sorry, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Pardon? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Peter, would you come forward, please?
In the school facilities world, people often talk about the game of cops and robbers. Where there are COPs, there are robbers. But I'm sure the voters will thoroughly analyze the detailed business plan that you have presented. Oh, wait, you haven't presented it yet, but you'll do that before November so you can explain how we won't get straddled with debt in the future. This board speaks a lot about equity. I know it's a goal and part of the vision for the board. There are opportunities that come up to move beyond words and to apply ideas of equity. One of them came up, in fact, 2 years ago, the last time the teachers got a raise. The teachers endorsed equity and spread the greatest raises to the people at the lowest income levels. The board gave the highest raises to the people at the highest income levels. We have another opportunity before us on this resolution. The United States has a graduated tax system. We can have a graduated tax, parcel tax, where the people who have the most pay the most. Why make it a flat rate? Make it a square footage. Many school districts do this. Pay the parcel tax by square footage so people, including many multinational corporations, that are in this district pay their fair share and not just the same as struggling households. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Questions now?
Yeah, you go first.
Oh, I was just going to say, we did talk about I don't know if you can speak to this, but we did talk about the per parcel versus the square footage. I don't know if you were involved in those conversations. I mean, I know we looked at it and it didn't behoove us because we have so many empty lots and this ended up being, It didn't pull well either. But I didn't know if you had any more to add to that conversation around that. Because that originally was what we were looking at because our superintendent had come from a district that had done that. And so he was super hot about it. He was super hot to do that. But then when we looked further into it, but anything else you might have to add around that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. That's my impression too, that we were looking into that. But because there's so many empty parcels, it just wasn't feasible for this district.
Well, and we don't have a lot of businesses either. I mean, we have Ritz and we don't have that many big businesses. But yeah, I think it was the empty parcels was a lot of it, but it definitely was looked at.
Yeah, clearly, we all would love the idea. If anyone that's been following our board meetings closely reads these reports closely and thoroughly considers them and asks questions can see this is our value. That's why we talked about it quite a bit. Thank you. If the numbers don't pan out as something that's feasible, like why would we do that? Doesn't make sense. So I would love to myself get a bill for like 10 times that amount. Like I said earlier, Menlo Park pays $4,000. I think there are homes and businesses in Half Moon Bay that would be glad to pay $4,000 a piece instead of $198. That's like, for a lot of people, like just nothing, right? But for a lot of people, it is something. So again, that's something we've discussed extensively, and unfortunately, because of a number of factors, I believe it didn't poll well as well. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check that. But definitely, you're right that I remember, because I didn't take that into account either, that undeveloped parcels, I think it was the issue, wouldn't pay in that case, because you'd be doing on interior square footage, right? And there's no interior square footage to count. So because there are so many that aren't approved, you pay, which is, yeah. So for sure. Other questions? I just want to ask you. Oh, again, I guess I just want to point out that the last time I think it was 5 years ago, we had the parcel tax here. It has not changed. Inflation obviously has happened to us. We talk about paying staff or paying our expenses when our property tax increases are not commensurate with inflation. This has been zero, which is definitely not commensurate with inflation. So I think it's more than appropriate for us to increase this, by a relatively small amount for most families. And again, a reminder, there is an exemption for seniors and folks with disabilities. So that's important to know as well.
And my question, when we said this is 2.4, that's the full replacement value, or is that the additional?
That's the full replacement, so.
Yeah, and I think it's 1.7 now, so.
Yeah.
So it's a good chunk. It's a good chunk more for, like, it'll be meaningful for us. We should notice.
Like 0.7 million.
$500,000 a year-ish.
Okay. I missed the public hearing, so opening up public hearing. Any other comments in the room? Questions? Public hearing closes. Any other comments? Let's call the vote.
This is a resolution and also requires a roll call. Kimberly?
Aye.
Carmen?
Aye.
Lisette is absent. Mary Beth?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Next on the agenda is item 5I, adoption of resolution 1524 and 1624 for temporary interfund borrowing for fiscal year 23-24.
By June 28, each and every one of our funds has to be positive. So we are bringing two resolutions to you where we are going to be doing the accounting of borrowing from bond, not from bond, never, never, never. Borrowing from another fund to make sure that those balances are positive. It is temporarily, and then we will be zeroing those after it's an accounting exercise. So have two resolutions for your approval.
I do have a question, but do I have a motion to approve first?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks. So when does it get paid? So we move it around this month. Does it get paid back at the end of the month? Does it get paid back in August? When does it go back over?
So you have your general fund. This is where you're going to be seeing it then later. That's a contribution from the general fund, but it ends at in a positive balance. So at the end of the day, those are contributions.
But one of them, it looked like it was from Fund 40 to the general fund, the way it was written. I just want to make sure we're clear.
The purpose of this is to finish all of the funds in positive. So if we have overspent some funds, then we do borrow, do the inter-borrowing.
Right, but it just doesn't tell us when the money goes back.
Oh, okay, so that's at the end of the school year.
Oh, okay. That's
So just by, yes, it does go back.
So
Within
when we
45
close out the
days.
books for June, so we're borrowing $4 million from Capital Projects Fund to the general fund. It will be back in
Correct.
Fund 40 by the end of the year.
Correct.
by the end, by June 2025.
By June 28, everything will be positive.
Yeah,
Then,
June 28, 24, yeah.
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 Okay.
I had the same question. Okay.
We counted for all the funds
This
in the
year.
positive.
So I think
Yeah.
maybe
I
there's
think
a
we're
little
good.
confusion. Well, so June 20, you're going to move it to the general fund by June 28th of this year, and you're going to move it back to Fund 40 by June 28th of next year.
No.
This year.
We have like 20 days or 30 days.
Okay, that's what, okay.
Right.
So within like a month, you'll move it back.
Right.
Okay.
This is just a few
So really,
weeks.
that's all we want to understand, temporary.
It's a closing
is
the
like-
books in positive.
Yeah. Just want to see what was like the
Yes.
timing for pushing it back.
It's
Like
immediate.
30 days-ish.
Okay. And so do we vote on each of these separate or together? Okay. So. So we did, so yeah, let's say this is the first one for 1524. So 5I, number 1.
Mhm. Kimberly,
Aye.
Carmen,
Aye.
Lizette is absent today. Mary Beth,
Aye.
Sophia.
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
And now, do I have a motion for item 5I2?
Motion to approve.
A second.
Have a second? I can second.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Carmen. Kimberly,
Aye.
Carmen,
Aye.
Lizette is absent. Mary Beth,
Aye.
Sophia.
Aye.
Passes 4-1.
Thank you.
4-0.
Awesome. Next on the agenda is item 5K, approval of resolution designating authorized representatives of Cabrillo Unified School District as signatories effective June 14.
This is the
I'm sorry,
board.
Point of order?
5J was removed.
Oh, we pulled 5J. Okay, got it.
This is going to be the set of new signatories and all the different, that would include Superintendent Amberly Alba and Jennifer, who is already a signatory, but it's updating all of the people who are signers.
It's also updating her title.
A motion we approve.
I'll second it. Let's call the vote.
Kimberly,
Aye.
Carmen,
Aye.
Lisette is absent, Mary Beth,
Aye.
Sophia,
Aye.
passes 4-0.
Thank you. And item 5L, adoption of resolution 1924, specifications of election order and approval, candidate policy form and administrative contact, and incumbent list form.
Yes, and this fall, we will have 2 seats open for the school board, and this resolution would fulfill our obligations for placing those positions on the ballot.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do I have any questions, comments? Call the vote.
Okay. Kimberly,
Aye.
Carmen,
Aye.
Lisette is absent, Mary Beth,
Aye.
Sophia,
Aye.
passes 4-0.
Thank you. Future events, June 19. June is the Juneteenth holiday. All sites will be closed. June 26, we have a special board meeting in the district office boardroom at 7 p.m. June 27th, we have a regular board meeting here at Cunha Intermediate School at 6 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Passes 4-0.
Thank you, everybody.
Woohoo!